What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Myth Vision Podcast. I'm your host, Eric Lambert. I'm joined by none other than Britt Hartley. Welcome back, Britt.
So happy to be here, and just want to say at the outset, I just love your channel so much and the kinds of nuanced conversations that you have on this channel.
We try. We do try. I am guilty of sometimes being, rough around the edges, but more often than not, I think you're right. We're nuanced. We're trying to get better, always aiming to be better at that, because I think we're all human. I think we're all like, even if you look at someone and go, they're completely wrong. Maybe they don't realize that. Maybe you were completely wrong at one point. Maybe we should show a little bit of patience and empathy and say, I was them 15 years ago.
Yeah.
And
so I was a human when I was Mormon, and you were a human when you were Christian, and we're humaning different, but we were human then and still human now.
Still human now. And I think human is the key. I think that's going to be something that we're just going to constantly come back to throughout this discussion today. Britt, you have a massive YouTube channel. I should have already popped this up, but let me just take the time to help people find you. Let's get these numbers past 100,000. Let's get her a plaque behind her on that shelf from YouTube. All right. She's been working hard. I really enjoy and value your insights. I'll tell you, you're very intellectual and logically grounded in your arguments and what you're doing. And it's made me think about things I've never really sat and thought about in a way that made me have to reach out to you, right? I found you over here on your TikTok channel. Someone said, you got to watch this video. And it was a video about like kind of seeing the matrix and getting behind and realizing like, oh, snap, evolution is actually priming us to continue to believe in these models that we've evolved with, such as religion and the various superstitions that we have. And it was something that really made my brain pop. And I was like, hold on. I got to reach out to this person. And I reached out to you and you were accessible. And we are now recording. So if you're on TikTok, go follow No Nonsense Spirituality. We're going to talk about that word spirituality today. Also, her website, nononsensespirituality.com. If you want to tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it just has some courses and links to my book, and when I am coaching, some coaching opportunities.
Awesome. Go check our website out, but also go subscribe to the YouTube side. Again, Britt, thanks for coming back. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Happy to be here.
Yeah, look, spirituality, there's been like, we can't hide under a rock and pretend there hasn't been a back and forth discussion, but I want to make this show about you. I want to make the show about the topics that I think are significant on why every religion produces the same experience. And where would you like to start? I mean, maybe we talk about your past and your deconversion, what your experience was like there, and move into the topic at hand.
Sure. Yeah, I actually do think that that's a good way for people to understand where I'm coming from. So I was raised Mormon. I lost my faith in that by the time I was 14, 15, got kicked out of my home, ended up becoming something like a nuanced Mormon or a nuanced Christian during that time. And went to Christian theology school, because everybody tells you when you're Mormon, you probably would have told me this 20 years ago, is like, oh, you just have the wrong Jesus. So I was like, all right, I just have the wrong Jesus. So I go to theology school. I want to study, what religion is outside of Mormonism, and ended up losing my faith in Christianity, which is a common thing to have happen in theology school, and also lost my faith in God. And for many people, that is freeing, and that is just like instant bliss. For me, like, I'm happy for those people, like, fantastic for you. I don't want to take anything from you. This was just my experience, that some of it was freeing, but some of it was really scary and overwhelming and existentially difficult for me. And I really lost with the death of God. For me, I lost any faith that there was any kind of objective truth or objective way to ground anything. I lost my community. I lost my identity. I had to really face my own mortality. I lost the kind of sense of self, or the illusion of the self, and lost my sense of free will. And so I was just losing all of these psychological and social anchors. And for me, that led to like a deep existential depression and nihilism, where it's just, what is the point of, like, I got to get up and do these errands? Like, this is so stupid. Like, what is the point of this? And I really struggled in that space. So for me, what I found is that as I started to get more into the secular side of things and the secular reasons for why we are religious and why we co-evolved with religion, I realized that there's lots of tools for human well-being that we can even see in the science for why we co-evolved with religion. It's not just brainwashing, that there's tools that religions have that help people to function. So things like awe and ritual and community and singing together and rites of passage for children, and times like at dinner time where you mark your values, and narratives and story and tools for existential fears and wisdom curating and transcendent experience, liturgical calendars, moral education, family culture. All these things were just kind of given to me on a platter when you walk into a church. And for me, what was really helpful in my rebuilding stage is, how can I get all the benefits of those things without having to believe things that I just can't believe. Like, even if I tried, like, I can't choose to believe these faith hoops that I have to jump through. And so for me and my time in nihilism and existential crisis, secularism was helpful, but secular spirituality was especially helpful in giving me some language and tools to be able to explore these resources that have been housed historically under religion and spirituality, and kind of dust off the dogma off of them and bring them into my life and my family culture with raising 4 children. I want them. We have solid science that shows that there are many kids who benefit from aspects of religion, especially for identity formation and community. And so I wanted some of those things for my kids, but I just didn't want to have to bring them to the Mormon church where, for example, my adopted kids who have brown skin, they're Islander, I didn't want them to ever read in the Book of Mormon that their skin was a curse. So like, how can I get these tools without that bullshit that they would have to read and internalize?
Right.
And so secular spirituality for me was just a great way to explore all of the benefits in the spiritual religious world without requiring any faith, without requiring the supernatural, without requiring any belief. And it just gave me a place to kind of reclaim all those things that were helpful for me, but that I couldn't access through faith or belief anymore.
Okay, there's a lot there. And I think
We'll start there. Yeah.
I was gonna say we'll unpack some of that stuff too, because there's some really good things there that you just mentioned. And thank you so much, Solera Knight, for the super chat. I don't know, do we want to take super chats as we go? I just didn't want to derail from our conversation.
I can go either way. Yeah.
Okay. So Solera says, and thank you, Solera, for being a member and the super chat. Every human is born spiritual until the proverbial forbidden fruit changes them. Cultural language or fermented fruit wine. Drunken monkey hypothesis?
Yes. So there's drunken monkey hypothesis. I think the stronger one is the stoned ape theory, that there's some theories that evolutionarily we started taking mushrooms and that led us on maybe a different primate path than some of our primate cousins. I'm not an evolutionary biologist. I can't tell you my opinion. I listen to these things. I can't tell you my opinion on those things because I just don't have the education there. But I think it's interesting to consider why we are maybe different than other animal species in our level of awareness. I'm certainly open to things like drunken monkey hypothesis or stoned ape theory, especially when we look at so many ancient religions that we see have combined with psychedelics. We even found an old Israelite temple that had some elements of THC on the altar, which was really interesting to find. And we definitely have caves where some aspects of the geometry, may show that there may have been a psychedelic ritual associated with whatever they were doing with the cave. So very interesting stuff. I don't have a strong opinion because it's just not my area of expertise, but very interesting.
Yeah, very, very interesting. And wouldn't that be interesting if we found out, Solera, that wine itself, the intoxication from wine and drunkenness somehow played a role in that? I mean, Dionysus goes pretty far back, and various other gods have these kind of interesting rites with drinking and getting intoxicated. So I don't know. I don't know enough about it. I've heard also meat consumption, just the diet, might have played a role into why humans evolved, their brains evolved the way they did. But I wanted to I guess, be a balancing board and also give my own experience, because I think as we unpack some of these things in what you described, I think we should be able to bounce these ideas off each other. Because when I deconverted, I didn't go through that existential issue that you went through. I didn't suffer with those issues. And maybe if I lay it out, maybe you can tell me what you think about it. And then I want to hear your thoughts. So I have changed my theology since I was 12. I mean, I went to a house church. It was King James only. We spoke in tongues. The Holy Spirit is evidenced through speaking in tongues, gibberish and prophecy and all that. And then I went to, different other churches like Baptist type churches. Then I went to Calvary Chapel Church. Then I became a Calvinist in my, young adult years, became a Reformed Calvinist, went to PCA, became a member. That was a radically different church cultural change, very much high church type thing. They drank real wine with the communion. It wasn't no grape juice like all the other churches. There's so much theology there. And then I got into eschatology, which led me to consider the second coming in a different way. I used to be just a regular pre-mill, thought the rapture was coming one day. When I went in the Presbyterian PCA church, they said, that's all like modern Tim LaHaye cartoon stuff. You need to look at like historical eschatology through the church. I'm like, just like you did, it's not real eschatology. You need to look at real eschatology. So I started studying amillennialism. Amillennialism. I became a partial preterist not too far after reading a case for amillennialism by Kim Riddlebarger or something like that. And so I ended up becoming a partial preterist, which says some of the prophecies were fulfilled. I'm still waiting for some in the future. But then I came across full preterism, which taught that Jesus said his generation would not pass away. The end was going to happen soon from his time, that it did happen because Jesus can't be wrong. I'm a believer, right?
That is an interesting way to get out of that. I do love that. It's a little bit of a trope, but I love that statement that says there's only two things that unite Christians across history. The belief that Jesus was coming in their lifetime and the fact that they were wrong.
Right. Well, that I didn't think he could be wrong. So when you're forced to think he has to be right and you're reading his words in the various gospels and Paul starts to highlight the same thing, you start seeing they thought it was going to happen in their lives, like not thousands of years into the future. I started to believe that. And there were others who already did. So they convinced me based on the arguments. So I became a full preterist, which made me a heretic in the PCA. The PCA treated me like dog shit, so I stopped attending. Well, I get an excommunication letter, like a legal document from the PCA church that said, you're no longer one of us. And it's not a liberal side. This is a very conservative side of the Presbyterian church. They've gone, anyway, I don't want to derail. So I get excommunicated. In this 2-3 years, I'm a full preterist. I believe Jesus' second coming happened. And then I come across comparative mythology. That was what did it. That's why myth vision is myth vision. And for me, I don't know why, mythology was the Achilles heel, but also the Band-Aid that I needed to realize all humans are telling stories, including the book I thought was above all the rest. So I started to compare the Bible with other myths and noticed there are legitimate, valid comparisons, and even myths that seem the Bible borrows from and reworks and stuff.
Can I just pause there? It's so
Please.
interesting that you say that, because there's been a couple times where there's been some secular movements to try to get comparative religion as a just section in a US history class for high schoolers to take. And they've tried to couch it as like, hey, we're not going to, as atheists and secularists, we're not going to write, this isn't like we're trying to trash religion. You guys write whatever you want about your own religions. Like, you Muslims and Christians, whatever you want to write about your religion, we will try to include voices that are speaking from the religion. We're not trying to do a hatchet job here, but we just want to have like a section on comparative religion so that students can get a very informed sense of the similarities and differences between religions. And it has always been shut down by the religious, because they don't ever want their religion to be just one page in 20 pages of different religions. And, oh, that's interesting. Like Buddha also has like a kind of virgin birth story. Like, it's interesting that a lot of our heroes narratives, we always try to backdate a story where they don't come into the world the way that everyone else does. That's interesting, and it starts to fall apart. And so it's so interesting that like secular people will fight for comparative religion classes or discussions, and it's the religious who shut that down for that reason, for what it did to you.
Yeah, it did do something to me because I thought God breathed. This is the word of God, the true story. This is it. All those other religions are false. And funny thing is, there's a story about Buddha walking on water. I kid you not.
Mm.
His disciple also comes out, doubts midstream, and falls into the water, similar to Peter. So there's a lot of sources you can look at, and you can get lost in the sauce of this. I'm just generally painting a narrative for you to tell me what you think happened to me psychologically or whatever. Best guess, because my experience was different. I got to comparative mythology, my understanding of God, because I'm like, okay, this is just one book, which is really many books, but God, I had this like cohesive image of God from the Bible. Then I realized all these other gods and all these other myths and all these stories are similar in many ways and also differences. But I went, wow, okay, maybe it's like the six wise men of Hindustan.
Mhm.
And we're all blind trying to touch the elephant. The elephant is God, but like we all describe it differently, and then maybe it's all the same thing. So I became a kind of pantheist, like all is God.
Mhm.
We humans just call it things, cultural differences, geographic differences, practices are different, whatever, but it's pretty much the same thing up there, wherever up there is. I mean, it could just be all around us. So God got bigger. But when
Mm.
God got bigger, and I didn't know a lot about science, the strength it had over me, like what I'm supposed to do, how I'm supposed to behave, the fears of hell, the fears of like, don't do this or else, or all of those fears of like the things I was learning from the Bible were going away. Like there was no strength that deity had. And the example I gave in my video when I confessed this years ago was, those little colorful toys that when you conflate them, they're like a small, dense cosmos. When you expand them, there's empty space, void in the middle, but like they're bigger, but there's no density. That's how I describe God. The density went away, but it got bigger.
Mm.
When
Mhm.
it got
Mhm.
bigger, I was willing and capable of questioning things I would have never questioned, doing things
Mm.
I would have never done. And eventually I studied a lot more about evolution. And that was where I was like, would an intelligent maker really set up the shop this way? So I started to doubt God's existence. And I was comfortable all along the way. I didn't have this crisis that you're describing. What I mean, what do you make of that? I don't know.
Yeah. So here's how I would just here's how I'm hearing that. What I hear in your story is you were always doing cognition. Like you're not dumb. You were never dumb in any of this process. I don't think when I was trying to do Mormon apologetics, like I was doing my best. Like I wasn't dumb then. And I don't think that you were dumb. You were always trying to make sense of faith through that journey, which is why it was always changing as you were learning new things. So in your story, I see that you were always doing cognition, but that when you started to bump into other myths and other kinds of religion, something happened to you cognitively where you moved from cognition to metacognition, where
Mm,
instead of just thinking, which you were always thinking, you were always trying to figure things out, you started for the first time thinking about your thinking, which is this doubt that you can get, which is if people believed in Zeus or people believe in this other god as much as I believe in mine, how
mhm.
can I know that I'm right and they're wrong? That's not cognition, that's metacognition. Now you're thinking about their thinking and thinking about your thinking, and how can you know who is right?
Yep.
And so whenever we get to that metacognitive level, it's going to be really damaging to religious dogmas because most of why we're religious is just the religion that we were born into, not because I don't know a single person who equally studied all religions, equally experienced every single religion, and said this one is the obvious true one. No, we just tend to use our cognition to prove the religion true that we're already benefiting from. That tends to be most of what we're doing. So you move into metacognition as you're doing comparative religion, and it changes God. And it's very common that the first thing that will happen, same thing for me, is that you don't throw away God. You just move into this perennial philosophy space where you're just all these religions are maybe just accessing different facets of God. This is a diamond with different facets. This is an elephant with different parts, right? And
Mhm.
that's a very common first shift to make when you move to that metacognition level. And I did too. For about a year, I would have called myself a perennial philosopher, which is that there is truth and these religions are just getting at it from from different paths. And then as you keep going down that road, though, as you start to open up for the first time to evolutionary arguments, and again, same thing happened to me, the evolutionary reasons for why we are the way that we are tend to be stronger than the religious reasons or the theological reasons for why we are the way that we are. And then so that God that's getting bigger and more porous and more abstract is happening at the same time that evolutionary arguments are getting stronger, are getting little meatier, are getting better and better evidence as it goes. And so something's happening where the secular arguments are getting stronger, and then the porous God is getting smaller, and that gap is getting smaller. And then all of a sudden you just realize like that God is kind of gone.
Yeah.
And I think then the shift that you make at the end there is that you come to accept that just because we experience something doesn't mean that our interpretation of that experience is correct, because we cannot all be right about these experiences that we're claiming to have. And that's, again, a metacognitive move. Now, why you didn't go into an existential crisis there, I think that matters a little bit more with personality. For me, I tend to be a little bit higher on the depression and philosophical, introverted, and I'm very high in neuroticism. So my brain spirals about negative things. And my belief in God was keeping some of that at bay. And so I didn't just at the time have the tools for dealing with the level of neuroticism that I have just by personality. So that would be how I would describe your experience for me. Does that resonate with you?
Oh yeah, no doubt, no doubt. And I guess you could take it further that once I hit that road, I was on that road for a while. I had reinterpreted all my experiences through my memory in rationalizing them and realizing like these are human. They were real, they were important, and I still have them. When I hear the right song at the right time when I needed it, or something, or the sun is just it's shining, and I wasn't paying attention to it for a long time, and then the sun is just a morning comes up, and I'm looking at it, and I'm having a deep thought, and I'm going, okay, I'm having internal dialogue. I'm still having communion with the conscious me inside. I no longer say it's Jesus anymore. I no longer say it's the Holy Spirit. I no longer say it's that God. It's me. All along it was me. And I got comfortable knowing that if I can just be real with me and realize, don't let that go. You don't have to go completely to the point where all of it is made up. Because I think that's where a lot of this can go. I mean, you're talking about nihilism. You're talking about when we start going down the path of evolution or a purely scientific observation of the world, we can start talking about how we were just bacteria and we evolved. I mean, it can look very grim. However you want to perceive all of this is very grim. You can do that. And it's I felt like even in this experience where I'm at today, it's like I hit a wall, right? And I'm at the wall. Okay. If it all is just atoms bouncing in a cosmos, however all this came to be, what's the point now? What's the point? What am I benefiting from this? There's a whole playground of toys back here as humans. We're just primates on this rock trying to make sense of the world. And I've hit this wall where it's cool. It's not true. The Matrix, that's what drew me to your videos, is you see the Matrix. Once you see the Matrix, now what? I feel like turning around a little bit and going back and playing with some of those toys, because I feel like, okay, we've rationalized ourselves so far away from, as if we're no longer animals, as if we're no longer primates, as if we no longer need to be connected to the earth the way we were for hundreds of thousands, millions of years. And now we're just robots. We're so above all that. And I feel, for me, I can't speak for everyone else, but I feel like playing with some of those toys without the superstition, if that makes sense.
All right. Yeah. Let me also address one of the comments. One of the comments says, I don't see how evolutionary, it plays into this. I don't see how evolutionary theory undermines perennial philosophy. I hope she elaborates on that. And so the more that you get into kind of this secular space of seeing why we do what we do and evolutionary reasons, the more you see that we never evolved to see truth. That that's not what we are as humans. Our brains are not recorders of reality. We have so many studies showing that what we see and what we remember of what we saw is not like a camera pressing record. So the more you get into evolution, the more you see that we are not beings that evolved for truth. You evolve for evolutionary fitness. And those are two different things. And so rather than the perennial philosopher saying, you know, oh, we're just all connecting to this one great truth, you start to think, oh, but evolutionarily, if we are not evolving to see truth and we're evolving for evolutionary fitness, then how can we even trust our rationality? And that's where it starts to break down, and you can get into very nihilistic spaces, which is like, what is even the point of rationality when we can't see outside of our own biases? Maybe we're not even interacting with ultimate truth. And you can get into some dark spaces that way. But what you're talking about is the shift that can happen that's really positive, which is that the only thing that we can know for sure, since we can't know if there's ultimate truth or even if we're interacting with it, the one thing that we can know for sure is that we are experiential beings, that there is a quality of experience, that even if we are icons on an alien computer, that whatever we are, whatever is ultimately true, there's a quality to experience. It feels different subjectively to put my hand on a hot stove or give my child a hug. And so that's a place that we can then build from when we accept that we just don't know most of what it is to be in this universe. Like we just don't, like the most, like the key answers, like what is consciousness and all these things, are like, we have to admit our ignorance, that we don't know more than we know. But the thing that we can know is that we are experiential beings. We are a kind of primate that experiences, and we can build from there. And that gives you a different kind of path than religion gives you. It gives you a path of, okay, like if I know that I'm going to die, if I know that any sandcastle that I build, the wave is just going to come, there's nothing eternal, it doesn't last forever, this earth is going to blow up, maybe no one even knows that we're here, fine. What are the kind of sandcastles that I want to build just for the experience of it, the way that we did as children, where we were building it because we were in the experience? And then if I go back to my list of what religions do, okay, the experience of awe, where that neurotic part of your brain calms down and you feel kind of at peace and you feel some oneness, you feel some connection, even if it's not supernatural. That's a great feeling. That's fantastic. Rituals where I process emotions out of my body, very good for me at the level of experience. Singing with people, community. I can reclaim these things because I like the experience of these things. It makes my life better, even if I'm going to die and even if there's no God. And then once you make that shift, then you can start rebuilding some of these things instead of on the foundation of capital T truth, which you now doubt now that you're doing this metacognition. Now you can build this up from experience, from the ground up, rather than like theology down or top down.
I love that. You said, and you brought us back to what I was hoping we would get to, because I didn't want to make this about me, but I felt like bouncing it back to you. Please, thank you so much for the super chats. I feel like I want to get into this a little bit and then we'll jump to them, because I do think this is going to distract us from what we're hoping to accomplish in this discussion. And then I promise you, I will take them in chronological order. Send in your super chats, questions, comments, whatever, and I'll be happy to get to them shortly. Britt, you brought up this aspect of, you know, what humans have done with religion, evolved with it. You've got, you know, the coping, the rite of passage. People become adults, you know, they've got these rites of passages for both male and females. You've got so many behaviors that religions have identified in people's lives. Me, as someone who no longer is a religion, I've noticed that I don't share those same dinner meals that I once used to have. Like, we must be structured, we must do these things and have these memories in the same way. A lot of these things have kind of dissolved in my mind because I'm secular now. I'm no longer doing these things. And I notice even myself with the online communities that we've created in leaving those spaces, that we're allergic. We are allergic to terms, to seemingly words that sound like they might be bringing us back to the shackles of Jesus, okay? I'm a slave of Christ. We can't use that term spirituality. Are you kidding me? We cannot use those terms. We can't talk about, you know, when someone says, God bless you, that's rude. Don't ever, that's disrespectful that they would say that. Or someone says to you, I'm praying for you. I've seen atheists get offended. And I'm thinking, is that religious trauma? Because I don't get offended. I feel like they mean well, usually. Now, some can do it condescendingly. Oh, I'm praying for you, but like, I don't know. I feel like there's parts of me when I hear spirituality, which is your name, right? No nonsense spirituality, where I cringe at it. I do get a gut reflex going, oh God, what are we talking about? What invisible spirits are floating around? This kind of nonsense, right? Or we've talked about Deepak Chopra or other people who abuse this term and use this within that kind of realm. You're using it though. And you say you don't believe in a God. You say you don't believe in angels and demons and devils, and you don't believe there are like metaphysical beings that are flying around or control things. So why would we ever want to use such a term when so many non-believers feel allergic to it?
Yeah, it's a great question. And to be fair, I think the first 2 years after religious deconstruction, I think I would have been too traumatized to use the word spirituality. I remember my first 2 Christmases, I didn't do anything. Like I was just frozen. Like I didn't know what I wanted to keep for my kids and what part of Jesus that I could still resonate with, how much of this community I wanted to still be a part of or not. I just literally like did nothing. Like my kids were young enough that like we just made some Christmas cookies and I gave them presents and I called it good. And so I understand that allergy. It still comes up for me because you've been burned and it's very painful. It's very painful to be wrong about your community and your identity and your beliefs and your story about your life. And so there will be trauma and that allergy. And as an ex-Mormon, ex-Mormons more than any other denomination are more likely to be atheist and allergic to spirituality than other domains because we were so wrong. like I could have a spiritual experience. Like Mormonism is a recent religion, and so we just have a lot more records than Christianity. There's less mystery about the church's foundations and who Joseph Smith was, is why I say it like that.
Harder to falsify, right? Like it's
yeah, like it's hard. It's like so much of Christian history is, it's just wrapped up in mystery. We just don't know. With Mormonism, this is a 200-year-old religion of a record-keeping people. We more or less know what happened. And I've had experiences where I read the Book of Mormon and I feel really good. And then that means, therefore, that the Book of Mormon is historically true, that Jesus came to the Americas and talked to the native people there and blah, blah, blah. And so when you're that wrong about your own feelings, that's a pretty wrong thing to be about. My feelings were not accurate truth seekers on that one. Then it just makes you allergic to any of that ever again, because you don't want to be stupid again, and you don't want to be burned again, and you don't want any of that. So I do understand that impulse. My argument is that there is a danger with fundamentalism and religion and religious trauma and all of that. And I speak to that every day as someone who's very established in the religious deconstruction space. But there is also a danger on the other side of the pendulum, which is nihilism. And right now with Gen Z, they're not struggling with too much religion in their lives, where like they're reading the Bible too much. They tend to, as a generation, be much more struggling on the chaos side. Their depression and anxiety is higher for whatever reason, for complex reasons, than other generations. They tend to be more falling into problems with the meaning crisis and lack of motivation and nihilism versus being fully fundamentalist in some kind of cult. So for me, I think that by reclaiming a lot of these tools, you avoid the problems of both. You avoid the problems of fundamentalism, because I'm not doing any dogma, any faith, any beliefs. I'm not doing any of that bullshit. But I'm also avoiding the problems of nihilism, where you're just thrown into this world. You're going to die. Like you don't have any way to, like, we co-evolved with religion because it gives us tools for psychologically functioning and coping with life. And we're just throwing this generation of kids into this meaning crisis where they don't have things like that family dinner where you say something and mark your values, which we have solid evidence and science that dinner as a family, especially when you do something to mark your values, some kind of ritual, is very good for anxiety for kids. It tells the brain, I know what to expect. And when the brain knows what to expect, it feels like it's safe. So there's so much science behind, like, oh, even though this liturgical calendar from this religion is based on maybe ahistorical events or beliefs that I don't resonate with more anymore. We know from the science that, especially for children, having a liturgical calendar, having family dinner, having rites of passage, having moral education, having community, having times that you sing together, having other adults that are teaching you values, these are all really good markers for well-being, especially for children and teens, but also for adults too. And so for me, reclaiming the term spirituality is really, and specifically saying secular spirituality, is saying I want all of that good stuff. I want all of those tools. I just don't want any of the dogma around it.
You're draining the term of its metaphysical roots the same way we've done with good day or goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye used to be God be with you.
Right.
And our calendar is still a Christian calendar. And,
Right.
Not everybody is Christian, but we still use it. Neil deGrasse Tyson talked about this. He talked about some word that Neil was using. And Neil said, if you wanted to try to go a day without saying a word or using something that previously was just like in the religious space, then you're not going to be able to say anything. Like it's just embedded into our language. But over time, words that used to just only mean a religious thing, like God be with you, is now just goodbye. And so that's what I'm trying to do with spirituality. I understand that this word comes with baggage. It really does. And I understand it's hard because the word spirit is in there. But what I'm hoping is that we can do with this word the same thing that we've done with other words, which is like to put this back into, to take it out of its religious context. And people will just say, well, why don't you use a different word? Like, okay, you can use well-being and kind of get there, or you could use psychology, or some people say spicy psychology, and get there. But when you're talking about let's say making some kind of ritual for your family or some kind of personal ritual, it just doesn't, saying well-being just doesn't seem to go far enough into all of the tools that religion and spirituality has done for people. And so I just don't think that those words go far enough, which is why some atheists like Carl Sagan was happy to use the term spirituality. Someone said in the comments, Sam Harris as well. There's just not a better word that means all those things that I just said: awe, ritual, community, singing, rites of passage, all the things that religions have done. So by saying secular spirituality, what I'm hoping to say is I want all the good stuff. I want the baby. Just leave the bathwater. And these dual terms are the best way that we've found to do that. I understand though that it's still problematic. So I hear some people say I'm a secular Christian. I've heard that one. I've heard spiritual atheist. I've heard rational mystic. There's a book by John Horgan called Rational Mysticism. We don't have a secular word. And so we tend to use then these dual terms. And I think that's how the language is changing. And I'm okay with language changing because like half of our words have religious baggage to it. We've just forgotten it. And I hope spirituality will be the same.
Yeah, I actually thought about this question prior to our episode. Words like soul don't mean what they used to mean for most people who use them. But notice there's a dual usage at the same time. Like
Christopher Hitchens was happy to use the word soul. He used the word sacred. He used the word numinous. He would sometimes even use the word soul, and he was, as skeptical as they come.
Yeah, and he doesn't mean he really believes there's some soul.
No, he just means the deepest part of you.
Right. It's a term that you can use. Inspiration, which is another one which comes from the Latin, to breathe into, and this is related to pneuma. So if you've taken inspiration from someone, stop using the term inspiration, because you clearly don't want to give religious baggage, bringing back the religious background of this term inspiration. I'm kidding. Enthusiasm, charisma, genius, sacred, obviously you brought that up. Holiday, goodbye, we talked about. Spirit, which this is the key one here. Demon. we use demon all the time. That has nothing to do with an actual demon. Atmosphere, influence, and all of these have like Greek roots or Latin roots or even Christian roots. Disaster, lunatic, jovial, let me see, obviously pagan, karma, zen, nirvana, guru, mantra, avatar, cosmos, even the term cosmos, which is an ordered universe that, specifically has its roots in Pythagorean and Platonic thought. So there's a lot of stuff that we could, words where we can go, everyone
And
stop using.
someone in the comments says I'm like Gretchen and Mean Girls trying to make fetch happen, and I just need to accept that fetch is not happening, which is funny. But I understand that I do that this word is problematic. But when I ask people what's a better word than secular spirituality, or I'm a secular atheist, or I'm a spiritual atheist, and if you say to just use the word psychology, then like I get that, but that to say that what I'm doing is psychology is very disingenuous, because that would be very unethical for me to say, because I'm not a psychologist. I have a master's degree in theology. I did a spiritual direction program in non-religious spiritual direction. I've gone and studied religions. I went to Thailand to study Buddhism. I went to Italy to study Catholicism. I've had a Sufi wisdom teacher. It's my connection to a wisdom lineage, and I've explored in that space. And so to just say like what I'm doing is psychology just doesn't seem to be ethical for me to say, because I'm not a psychologist. I've been exploring this in the realm of the religious, theological, spiritual world. I'm just trying to get these tools without any beliefs. So for me, spiritual atheist is how I kind of self-identify. That resonates with me. But if you are my client and you don't like the word God or spiritual, like these are just words. I'm just, these are just mouth sounds for me to express my human experience. They're not, words are not platonic in that way for me, where they just always have to stay the same, or they're representing some ultimate truth. So with other people, I would just, especially with clients, I just use their words. But for me personally, spiritual atheist is the best way that I've found to kind of describe what I'm doing, that I'm very interested in these tools that have been housed in religion and spirituality. I just want to do it without belief and faith.
I think the difference between some atheists like me and others is I came up through 12 steps. And even as I deconstructed, I had to visit the 12-step program to go get my chips and to share my testimony, to kind of tell people like, hey, I made it, you can too, kind of thing, encouraging addicts and drunks that they can make it. And I remember going in the room, I even used the term God in one of my speeches as an atheist. And I said, well, my higher power, God, help me get clean and sober. And I said, it's G-O-D. My God is an acronym. It's G-O-D. Group of Drunks. And I smiled, and they all looked at me and they smiled. And I said, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't have gotten sober. Thanks for being here. And, I was sharing my testimony. A lot of people came up afterwards. They weren't offended by me using the term in a completely different way that drained it of any actual God, and said it was the group of drunks. It was you that I use the term in a fun way. And oftentimes they talk about 12 spiritual steps. They talk about these 12 spiritual steps, right? I know a lot of people have issues with the 12-step program because it can feel culty and oftentimes does give off cult vibes. A lot of people are very in the groups, can be very dogmatic about, oh, it's only AA that can get you to it's like, no, there's many other ways to get sober. But when they talk about 12 spiritual steps, my mind immediately thinks of 12 behavioral practices. Like I already think of like, what is the pragmatic meaning behind when you're using the term spiritual? I know they're not just going 12 spiritual things. And you're like, what's that mean? It means nothing, because you can't really define that. That's too vague. They define it by telling you, here's some things you do. Here's some steps you can take. And then they're trying to make you make internal inventories and stuff. So anyway, I don't know if you feel like commenting on that, but you brought up like all sorts of ritual practices and behaviors that we do and that you're a coach for. Maybe we get into some of these and unpack the science behind the utility of them and why this is an important area in the secular world. Because I've talked to many atheists since, I don't know, I've become one in 6 to 8 years ago in the online place, online sphere. And they always usually say, go talk to religion or what is it? These programs that they ask people to go to help people who are struggling, whether they're in a faith position but they no longer believe, recovering from religion foundation, various programs like this. They pretty much just like point the finger to them as if all your solutions and problems will be solved through that organization or that thing. And I never hear like public building we've talked about deconstructing. We do it every day, all day as atheists. We love to poke holes in religion, but that buildup, I don't see. So before I keep going and then you lose track of anything I said earlier, let me stop while I'm
Okay. Yeah. Let me see where I want to go with this. So secular humanism is great. Like people will say like, yeah, you just need to go to Recovering from Religion, watch some philosophy videos online, look at secular humanism stuff. And I'm not against any of those things. I've benefited from all of that. I still think that there is a benefit though to working with someone like a chaplain or someone who comes from a wisdom tradition or a spiritual director, because your therapist could say rituals are good for you or spirituality is good for you, and they can ask you about that. But let's say, but they can't really do that with you within their domain. So, for example, there was a woman I knew who she gave up her last name, in order to get married, and she wanted to reclaim her own name, and she wanted to, so often our rituals. We do a lot of rituals with fire and with water. And we've been doing rituals around fire and water for at least tens of thousands of years. This is a human behavior that we have, to immerse yourself in water and to rise up with some new intention, letting something else go. And this isn't just woo-woo, because we have solid science that just from self-reporting, but we have science that shows that rituals scientifically help to process emotions out of your body. And so a therapist may know this and say, it'd be really good to have a ritual. But this person wants to do a ritual where they reclaim their baptism, because their old baptism meant something that they don't resonate with anymore. And their name wasn't someone that wasn't, they want to reclaim their name. So maybe they want to go into a body of water with a group of women and immerse themselves and let their old name go and reclaim a new chapter in their life. Now, I can show an atheist all the science showing like this is psychologically good for you, even though there's not a single thing happening metaphysically, nothing, right? Religion just took that and called it baptism and said, we have the only ritual, right? That's what religion does. This is just a human thing where we are embodied, ritualistic, storytelling creatures. And when we embody, these kinds of changes, it helps us to process faster. Right. And so I may go and plan a ritual where I do this in a body of water with a woman. That would be something that, maybe you can't do by just reading the secular humanism website. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And when we talk about secular humanism, it's great. I'm a big fan of what they're doing, but are they raising communities? Are they going to help give, like when I was Mormon, you got many rites of passage as a child. From when you turn 12, you go from teen or child to teen, and then you go on a mission when you're 18, and there's various rites of passage. And we are discovering the science that when you are growing up, especially in those teen years, that some kind of rite of passage or ritual there can really help the brain sort itself out as it's changing from child to adult. And so, rites of passage are just really great. So there is science behind all of these things, but you may need more than just the secular humanism website to recreate a family culture from scratch. What are you going to do for moral education? What are you going to do for your family church, on Sundays if you don't think that church is great? Okay, how are we going to build community where I do this with other people? How am I going to develop daily, weekly, monthly, yearly rituals between me and my family so that we have a family culture, so that they get all of that identity and community? That's the space where we're early. And so hopefully all of that is developed over time.
If I may, just to add to
your point. We have so much that we need to do in that space.
I was going to ask you about this because I know I don't want to ramble again. I want to just ask you this. But then if the secular people start to imitate the religious practices and behaviors of the religious, aren't they falling trapped to the woo of the behavior of religion? I mean, point is like you're just trying to adopt and say, look, I got a term here, that an umbrella term that fits what I'm trying to say, all these different categories. How are religious people who are allergic to even the behaviors of religion, if they're told by someone, like say they go to a psychologist and the psychologist goes, you need more ritual. And you're like, ritual? That sounds too religious to me. And it's like, no. What I mean is a pattern of behaviors, like your brain is what it's like. Can we not educate the very sophisticated secular people to realize like, hey, before there was religion, we need to make this clear to people who've deconverted from religion, who may have a chip on their shoulder, who may have trauma, to understand that before there was ever Hinduism, before there was ever Christian religion, period, like any of the organized religions we have today, these behaviors, these patterns, these traditions, these rites, these rituals, humans were doing before there was ever a religion on earth. I know our combat is often with the religious, superstitious worlds that we currently see today. But before that, humans were doing these things to survive, even prior to organized religions and written history. So I just wanted to make a kind of a funny and go, oh, you want me to do a ritual? That sounds religious.
And
you know what I mean?
this is why, like, sometimes, especially our generation of millennials and some of Gen X that are deconstructing from religion, sometimes it's a hard ask to, in one lifetime, do all the work deconstructing and also do all the work of rebuilding when religions have had thousands of years to develop these systems that we've co-evolved with. And so I understand that it's a hard ask, but the danger here is that, okay, you just deconstruct from religion, that's great. But like you were saying, at some point you got stuck. And if you don't, if we can't address the religious trauma, then the religious trauma keeps us from getting tools that will help you in your life. And I don't want that for anyone. I don't want, like, for me, I don't want Mormonism to have such a control of my life that I never touch these tools again that would help me and make my life better, even scientifically, because it has the stench of religion on it.
Right.
Because that's still in my 40s then, giving my childhood religion, Mormonism, total control over my life in a negative way. And so for me, reclaiming these things is like walking into the Mormon church and saying, like, if there's anything good here, which there's all kinds of studies showing how religious people can have, better markers of well-being. I'm taking this, I'm taking this, I'm taking this, I'm taking anything that's good or positive here. And I'm not going to let Mormonism or religion or my trauma from that stop me from taking tools that are good for me experientially, scientifically, for my family, or else that's giving religion too much power over me still, even in the deconstruction space.
Well said. By the way, it's weird you brought that up, the whole baptism thing. I went into the Jordan River. This is actually in the Jordan River, and baptized my buddy there, Nil, and then also the Queen of Myth Vision. We did it. We're all dressed in Jesus is on our, like, the icon of Jesus is on our shirt, right? And I baptized them in the name of Myth Vision, and like, it was a blast. I'll tell you, we did it. We did it just for fun, but there was a sense in which the memory of this event. By the way, there was a lunar eclipse at the exact moment we were in the water. I kid you not. I'm not making this up. So we did there's little fish that are nibbling on our feet in the Jordan, by the way. That's why we're giggling so much, because they like pick at your skin. But we did a ritual, and it was just for fun, but like it carried significance. Like, even today, I remember it and I'm like, man, that was amazing. The experience was something I wish I could do with my kids. There's something of value in that experience.
For my 40th birthday, I wanted to create something really special. And I wouldn't have been able to do this a year after religious deconstruction. The whole thing would have just freaked me right out. But now, like, going on 10, 15 years later, I turned 40 this year. And I really wanted I wanted to gather the women in my life together and really make an experience, really dive into this kind of ritual. So I had them bring, instead of a present, bring some wisdom or a poem or something to share. It was beautiful. We talked about some mythology of an archetype of going from maiden to mother to crone. And then we did this ritual in a circle and we reclaimed the sacrament. And again, would have felt really weird and dumb and scary a year after religion. But what we did is, instead of the sacrament being about Jesus in some man's body, we reclaimed the sacrament as women, that life comes from our bodies, that the only people who laid themselves on the altar for humanity and bled for humanity is not Jesus, but the women who bear humanity, who have periods when they're 12 years old and start bleeding for humanity. And so we did a ritual around that, and we reclaimed that, like, you don't get to take blood and sacrifice and creation from us women, because we've been the ones doing it. And we reclaimed a sacrament ritual. It was one of the top 5 experiences of my life, just really profound, really powerful. And again, like, I understand that some of this stuff sounds religion adjacent, but for us, because this is my friends and they're all similar to me, where they want to be able to do things like this, but not have to believe that there was no magic happening, nothing metaphysical happening. It was all just creating an experience that was profound for us at the level of experience. And we were playing in this place.
Exactly.
So I think there's something to do, like religious deconstruction, if we can get through the phase of deconstruction and the trauma, that we can actually start to open up to how do we play in these places that are good for us, and not let religion have the monopoly over things like ritual, over things like marking values at dinner time, over things like moral education, over things like, curating experiences of awe. I want to take all of that from religion that has had a monopoly unfairly over these, what you say, deeply human behaviors that we've been humaning for longer than any of our modern religions.
Wow. You said a lot there. There's so much to unpack. And you mentioned there's a lot of science behind all of this. I mean, all of this can be backed up by case study after case study, and shows the benefits of these things. I was thinking while you were talking there about those things, that our hardware has evolved for this kind of behavior. It would be a disservice, I think, to the hardware to just like start to go, oh, I don't believe, therefore we must then remove any of the stuff that was beneficial to what made us evolve and satisfy that hardware. And I guess to the hardware software question, software being whatever the practice might be, what is your thoughts? Maybe there's some research you've discovered behind the meaning crisis that we're finding. Like, a lot of people who aren't today, I see kids, they live on their tablets. They probably play video games 24/7 or watch shorts all day long, just scrolling through their phone. Literally, that is where they're getting all their meaning and value, is through social media. They don't actually go out and touch grass. They're not actually in nature. They're not actually doing the things for hundreds of millions of years our ancestors have done. And I ask that, like, do we need to go back a little here? Do we need to find a way to negotiate this? What do you take of what I said?
Yeah, so the meaning crisis is very complex, and there's aspects of it that I'm just not qualified to talk about. So I recognize that the part of the meaning crisis that I'm addressing is just one part of what may be a very complex problem for Gen Z. But something interesting that Alex O'Connor has been talking about, he's been doing quite a few conversations on the meaning crisis, especially with John Vervaeke, is this idea that every time in every period of human history before now, you grew up in a community, and in that community, you had a shared myth, you had the rituals, you had the community, you had some kind of narrative, you knew your story in your community, and you had some kind of narrative for your place in the universe. And that helps us function. That helps us get up and get going and do all the things that humans do. And what we're finding with Gen Z is, compared to any other generation in history, they have to deal with more because they're seeing more of the world than any other generation. Like, they grew up seeing the entire world all at once, and they see the level of suffering, they see the wars, they see the starvation, they see all of it much more than anyone else did. But they also have to see more of the world with less of a nest period than every other generation got. Usually, as a human, you grow up in some kind of small world where you get to grow an identity, that you belong to a community, that this is the story and this is what we do and this is what we're about and this is our place in the universe. And it kind of keeps you going, and it's good for our human development. And so what Alex O'Connor talks about is that every time someone scrolls and sees a different kind of story and a different kind of narrative from a different kind of culture, they're realizing, like, oh, my story, my community is not the only one. And so it's almost like, the way he says it is, every 7 seconds when you scroll, all you're seeing is death, because all you're seeing with everybody else's story is that, oh, there's just an infinite amount of stories. I have no way to tell who's right and who's wrong. I have so many choices, but I don't know how to orient myself in the universe. There seems to be a lot of suffering and problems, and the world seems like it's on fire. And they didn't get that nest period where they're developing the rites of passage, the identity, the help from other adults, and being raised in a community. So this generation is dealing with more with less tools and resources than any other generation. And so what I want, when I talk about secular spirituality, if you wanted a pill that would be the most effective pill, this comes from the research of Dr. Lisa Miller, who is a professor doing the science of spirituality for the past 25 years at Columbia. She's really the leader in that space. And if you could have a pill that could be the most effective pill against depression and suicidality and risky behaviors in teens, it is spirituality. It is some kind of sense of your own narrative and connection to yourself and outside of yourself. And so we still need these things, like you were talking about, in our brains, that even if you lose your religious story, our brains are still run by narratives. Stories is how we connect to our own brains and to the world. Right. And so if you don't have a story for what your life is or what you're about, then your brain is going to struggle. You're going to feel like you are a bit unanchored, or you're just kind of putting out fires in your life rather than living an intentional life. So I understand that for a lot of religious deconstruction people, including myself, the things that we're talking about today, it might have been triggering to hear the first year that I was out. But I'm just like, authentically for me, these are things that have been helping me, especially after my period in nihilism, when I felt like I got really stuck in the secular world. And so I just kind of share that, for people who benefit from it. But I understand people's allergy to the things that I'm talking about. There's someone in the comments saying, I'm just being Christian without calling myself Christian. It's like, no, I just want to be a human and have all these human tools that every other human has had. I just don't want to have to believe in anything, but there are tools here.
Yeah. Look, two things. I want to get into the nihilism. I really think that experience and some of the darkness is worth bringing out, because look, this isn't to scare people, but I think it's important they understand how dark it can get, and why, once you realize, like, if there is no inherent purpose, there is no inherent meaning in the universe, right? You start to realize these kinds of paths you can go down. What's the point, right? A lot of people have these existential crises, like, what's the point? And some people could just the point is just enjoy it right now. Just enjoy, just play make believe like these things aren't maybe the case. And some people can cope with that different than others. I'd like to get into that with you, but also to this comment of if someone, I haven't seen it. I haven't been paying attention to the chat yet, because we're going to get there. But is like, if I'm visiting an Eastern, like in the East, and I go and there's a Buddhist temple, I'm going to like pay respect, probably have silence, meditate, whatever, like along with the people that I'm hanging out with. Am I now all of a sudden a Buddhist because I'm simply doing some of the rituals that they do as I'm about to go eat dinner or whatever somewhere? I might pay some respect to the cultures that I'm actually around whenever I'm in those kind of environments. That doesn't mean I believe Buddha is really some dude who hit Zen and actually is in some metaphysical way.
Like, you'll go to a yoga class and say namaste, like the divine in me recognizes the divine in you, and we'll all say namaste to each other at a yoga class. And that has its own history and its own religious history, but we can still just do yoga. That's okay.
Yeah, I don't
to not do yoga because it's associated with this term namaste, and I don't believe I have a divine within, just seems like so unnecessary. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And a lot of
some of these things.
Yeah, and a lot of people look at us and say, like, kind of like Dawkins thinks he's culturally a Christian because it's what he grew up with. It's his whole life. He knows how Christian, like, it's the culture in which he lived.
He sings, he goes to a pub on Christmas Eve and he sings not just like the secular ones, he sings Christmas carols. To him, it's just part of his history as a country and part of his family. He has a Christmas tree. All 4 members of the atheist apocalypse, horsemen, whatever, they all had Christmas trees. We can reclaim, just because something has been touched by religion in the past does not mean we can't reclaim what was great about it. And to not touch, to not not do Christmas because in the past it's been associated with Jesus and you're just going to never do anything Christmassy with your kids again. Just seems like I understand the trauma response of that, and I did that the first 2 years. But for long term, I just think that maybe there's a way that you can reclaim that holiday in a way that's authentic to you, rather than having to throw away every single thing that has ever been touched by religion, because you're going to throw away more than you realize. There may be a baby in that bathwater.
Yeah, it almost seems like the fundamentalism is still there because it's what we did with when you look at like Jehovah's Witnesses who think Christmas is pagan. I'm not touching it. Well, they're not touching because they think it's pagan. Oh, you're not touching it because you think it's Christian. Oh, like at what point do we kind of?
At what point just put up a Christmas tree with your kids? Like they might like it. And then someone says like just follow Eastern traditions. You don't have to do mental gymnastics. Like I understand that in the West we look at Eastern Buddhism, for example, and we see it as very secular. But if you go to a Buddhist country like Thailand, for example, they're very superstitious with their Buddhism.
Yeah.
It is very prosperity gospel. So like we can't just say like Eastern spirituality is just the answer. They have their own metaphysical history too. They have their own problems with superstition and prosperity gospel. Just because like secular Buddhism is more positive in the West or more popular in the West doesn't mean that they don't have that. So the fact that we can make secular Buddhism is fantastic. I just think we should do that with religion in general.
Yeah, and getting back to your nihilism, I think it's worth taking us through the significance of that and maybe what is that darkness? What does that
Yeah.
look like? And why is it important that you do what you do? Because you don't do what you do randomly. Like you found yourself in a bad spot. And if I may, just to make a comment, I spent several years helping drug addicts get clean. Obviously, I was a drug addict. I know the dark, extremely dark world of being addicted and not knowing how to recover from opiates and alcohol. I didn't have as much of a difficult time in history with, but I still had serious alcohol problems. My father's an alcoholic. So I decided I was going to devote because I felt like more resources were needed to help people who were actually struggling with addiction. And I was able to help people get recovery. I have a whole nother YouTube channel. You can find my name on YouTube where I do that. And so you do what you do, but it's important people know why, because they just leave the church and everything will just get better. Right, Britt?
Mm. Yeah, so for me, what nihilism was about is one was like losing objective truth, that you realize that we didn't, like we said before, we didn't evolve to see truth, and we don't even know if we're really interacting with truth. Uh, there was some podcast that I was listening to, a scientist, that they tried to quantify what we know, and it's like, well, we know 3% of the questions that we've asked, and 0% of like the questions we don't even know to think to ask, and so like so just like that ignorance, that if I'm a truth seeker, but I can't find really anything objective truth that I can really ground, then what is that? What am I? So I had an identity crisis with that. But really it was the death of God, which meant that I'm going to die and there's no ultimate meaning and this world is going to blow up and no one's going to know that we're here. And in a million years, like nothing that I do today will matter. Like not in the universe, nothing that I do today will matter. So like, why am I getting out of bed? And I'm going to put on these clothes and like pretend to be a human and talk about the weather and do all this stupid shit. It's like, what is the point? Like like life is such a struggle. And it's so hard. And then like, for what? And then this world is going to disappear and nobody knows that we're here and none of it mattered. Like it just felt so stupid. Like all of it just felt so stupid. And then what got really dark for me was when I lost the concept of having free will, or kind of the illusion of the self broke apart for me. It was like, okay, so I don't even have free will. So I'm in this robot, what it felt like to me, because I was very dissociated. I'm in this robot that has to commit violence in order to eat. And even if you're a vegan, you are affecting some kind of conscious life somewhere. Like vegans don't get to totally avoid this problem. So I'm in some kind of robot meat suit. I don't have free will. I have to kill conscious life in order to live. And and I didn't consent to be here, and I didn't consent to live under these conditions. And then I'm just going to suffer, and then I'm just going to die. Like, this is stupid. And the hardest thought that I got really trapped in is that under these conditions, the most ethical thing to do would be to remove my consent to live in a world like this, because I don't want to have to kill conscious life in order to live. I don't want to have to do any of this. This is all so stupid. I'm just gonna I'm just gonna work hard to make this monopoly money so that I can buy things to put in my house and just eat, to kill other, I have to kill other conscious life to eat, and then I'm just going to die. Like, what is the goddamn point? Like, maybe the most moral thing to do would be to end my consent to live and to end my life. And I really got stuck there for a while because I just saw no point in consenting to live in a world like this. And it was very dark for me. And if I didn't have kids, I think it might have gotten pretty dangerous for me. My kids kept me alive. And so for about a year or two, I would wake up and I felt like I was in a video game, super dissociated, like I said, and I would put on my character and pretend to be human, because my kids wouldn't understand any of this, and nobody that I knew would understand that rant that I just had. And I just have to pretend to be human because my kids don't deserve to, grow up without a mom. And I would just wake up and I would play my little video game character because the other video game characters cared about my character. And then I would go to bed and I would do it the next day. And I just wanted to die every single day. I just wanted out. All of this just felt so stupid. And so, I understand that what I'm talking about is not for everyone, even in the comment section. Mm-hmm. All I'm here to do, I'm not here to be a guru. I don't have a 12-step plan for your life. I don't have a follow me. I don't have I hope to get to 1 million subscribers goal thing. All I do, like you, you do. All I do, like you though, Derek, is I say, hey, I was in a real rough spot. Here's some things that really helped me. Yeah. If you feel like some of these things are resonating with you, I'd love to help, because I went through that process alone. I didn't have anybody to talk to about that experience. Everybody was so religious and wrapped up into their own story of reality. They couldn't meet me in the void where I was. And so I'm just here to say, if there's maybe some tool, you feel like you're in that place, here's some tools that have helped me, and I'm happy to share. And if it's not for you, and if it's in language that's not for you, that's okay, because what I'm saying today, 10 years ago wouldn't have been for me, and 20 years ago definitely wouldn't have been for me. And that's just in my own life. So I'm okay. I'm not trying to take over the world. I'm just here because I struggled, these things helped, and I get a lot of meaning and purpose from helping others in places where I got stuck. That's the reason that I'm here.
It's weird the way you described that. Reminded me of a moment in my life, and who knows where the moments may go in the future for the people you're describing who may not have that experience yet. They might down the road. You never know. I mean, we go through shit. Life is not easy. I know, because I never expected to have panic attacks 8 to 10 months ago. I mean, I ended up going to the hospital twice 1 week thinking I'm dying, and I could not control. I didn't give consent to my body and my mind causing me to go through this shit. I did not know how to control it. I can't even tell you. It was so much of a nightmare. But it reminds me what you said of when I was I was desperate in the lowest part of my life, addicted to drugs. I'm hooked on heroin. I'm injecting it at this time. I go and ask for a $20 front from the dope dealer. I got to steal something later that day to get the $20 so I can try and give it back to him. That's my life, the ritual that I'm living to keep myself from feeling sick because I'm trapped and stuck on opiates. And I saw my reflection in a spoon. Literally, I spilt some of the heroin into my pants in the back seat of the car, and I start crying. I already took a piece of Suboxone, so I already know my receptors are kind of blocked from the opiates anyway. So I did all this to try and get this so that it didn't feel like crap. I spill some of it in my sweatpants. I start crying. I'm pissed. I'm angry and I'm sad. And I'm like, how did I get here? Like, I don't even know how I got here. I don't even know what I'm doing. And I'm looking at my reflection in the spoon, as distorted as it was. And I start crying. And I'm just like, how do I get out of here? I felt like I needed something had to give, or else it was over for me. And I didn't want to live any longer, but I was too afraid to end myself. And that's how I felt every day until I finally got clean. And if I feel like kind of my own way, I had that in addiction, but I still believed in, I guess I wasn't consciously thinking of a God, but I was still under the umbrella intellectually of thinking there might be something out there, and I believed in God. But it's dark. It's a dark place to be. It's depressing. It's not a easy place. And yeah, I commend you.
And this goes back to off air, we were talking about that we have to talk in atheist spaces about the difference between having truth as your highest moral virtue or having well-being as your highest moral virtue.
Yeah.
Because I learned later on that studying philosophy has an inverse relationship with happiness. Like the more you study philosophy, the more you're going to learn some things that are going to be quite troubling and or depressing. And at some point, yeah, you're going to have things that you learn or experiences that really suck without that religious buffer that makes everything okay. That like, oh, grandma's in heaven now, or it's all going to be okay, or whatever. And so I don't want to pretend in the deconstruction space that everything is always better for the rest of your life if you just walk out of a church building.
Yeah.
And sometimes we talk about it that way. Sometimes we get on our high horse and become an identity of our own, where our only identity is just to make fun of religious people. So we felt superior when we were in religion and saving people, and then we feel superior when we're atheists, yelling at people at how stupid they are for being religious. And I just think there's got to be something more than like those two identities. Like
or making fun of them, or not just mocking the religion, making fun of them as if you're morally a better person. You're a better human being,
which I can't do because like I have enough of a connection of myself that like, hey, there's a piece of my life that was religious, and like I don't want to ever say anything about the religious that like I would shame myself because I was her, and it'd be very hypocritical for me to stand there and talk about how religious people are just stupid. And so this is when I started to really value well-being more than truth-seeking. That does not mean that I set aside my skepticism. I never will again. This is like a covenant I've made with myself as an ex-Mormon. I never again will walk into a room where I have to check my skepticism at the door. I'll never do that. It doesn't lead to wholeness for me. I'll never put myself in that situation again.
Yeah.
But if I prioritize well-being, then it allows me to I'm not abandoning skepticism, but it allows me to play in some of these places because it's good for me, versus just trying to pretend like I'm just a rational robot and all I'm going to do is sit around all day and read scientific studies. That for me is not the fullness of human experience.
Yeah. So like at the beginning when we said we're going to come back to humans, like you just described, okay, and which is more important? Let's lay out a question, a hypothetical one. We were talking about this, and I think we talked about this in the last live stream or the one before that. I think we've done 2 other ones, didn't we? Yeah, we've done.
I don't know now.
One on hell, and then one I think we just got your story. Helping
right.
people with the
That's
fear
right.
of hell. And the question is, what's more important? Having the accurate, correct propositions, having the absolute facts of what is true when we still don't know, and we have so many questions, and we're trying to we're trying to understand what is reality, what is the actual facts. Is that having the correct proposition and accurate proposition more important than well-being? Which would mean someone can hold to ideas that are false. They're not accurate propositions, yet the outcome in the animal that we are, because we're not robots, is better. And so the analogy I came up with before I was going to get into this discussion today, I thought of this question. I said, okay, I want to use a human's death, but let's just go with an animal's death, because some people, believe it or not, like animals more than humans. So I think it's probably going to reach a broader people to say a little child's puppy died. Okay. The young child's puppy died. Do we tell the child, listen, the puppy's decomposing and you're never going to see it again. It's buried in the backyard, 3 feet in the ground. Or do we say something like, the puppy is in a peaceful place now, and the puppy is now, like, you see, like, do you tell it the dark, cold truth and say, man up, you child? Or do we say something that is much more well-being, comforting, and allows that child to be comforted, which is a lie in the most literal, strictest sense? But which one do we choose, Britt?
Yeah. So that situation is tough because like one of my core values is just like being honest and not lying, and especially to my kids. And it's led to a better relationship with my kids, that they just know that I don't lie to them. So I don't like lying and saying something like the dog is in doggy heaven now, because I do feel like what that teaches the kid is that like death is something to be afraid of. We're going to whisper about it. We're going to use these other words like sleeping and other things. And we have studies that show that when you do that, kids internalize that death is something to be afraid of. Whereas if you actually just, what I'm a fan of is microdosing the truth. So I'm always telling the truth. But it's done in age appropriate ways. So in science, for example, when kids are in school, they learn that like birds fly and mammals have live births and whatever, and they have these categories. Now, is that capital T true? Actually, no, not really. Like everything that you learn in kindergarten, you learn later on is scientifically more complex and nuanced, right? But the proper human growth and human development, even in science, is to make a model that you can understand. It's not lying, but it's as complex as you can handle. And then you break that down. And in third grade, you get a more complex one. And then you break that down. And then by the time you're in like doctorate physics, you're doing like, crazy things that are counterintuitive and all of that. But you have to start with, birds fly, all birds fly, So for me, like, I'm a fan of always staying in the realm of honesty. And I think that that's a great core value to have. But I think that we have to still value well-being more than truth, that even though it may be true to show a 5-year-old all of the 5-year-olds that are getting killed, and you can show them just video after video, you're like, yeah, that's true. You can do that. That is truth. Is that going to be good for their well-being? No. And so I'm a fan of, I don't want to throw away truth, but well-being to me has to matter more than truth. And so we have to always couch the truth that we're doing, especially with children, towards well-being. Another example, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you in the vein of that one topic, because I want you to give other examples. I had my best friend, one of my best friends, overdosed, 40 minutes, no oxygen to the brain, fentanyl overdose. His sister called me. I get a call. I'm outside Texas Roadhouse in North Carolina, about to go eat dinner, and all I hear is sobbing, and she could barely make out a word. Her brother died, my best friend, and she's telling me he was too good for this world. This is her saying it. He was too good for this world. God took him. That he was just, it was too great of a human being. God had to have taken him from the planet, and now he's in heaven. And I know that has to be why he's gone. Now I decided I was going to tell her the truth, right? And I was just going to say, sorry, that's not the case. Your brother was an addict who overdosed and died, and he's not in heaven. There is no heaven. And, you just need to accept reality and stop coping. No. I said, yeah, you're right. That's what I told her. I just said, yeah, you're right. I'm not about to go in and explain to her why I think that what she's literally saying isn't the case. How do you navigate that kind of conversation? Do you tell the truth, or do you go with the emotions and understand that their well-being and their way of cognitively functioning and trying to resolve what just happened tragically? You see what I'm saying? Like,
I probably, again, like, I wouldn't lie in this scenario and say like, yes, I believe that he's in heaven too, if I don't. Like, I really do try not to lie, but there's plenty of room in that conversation for me to say I'm really going to miss him too, and to say something that I can say authentically but can meet your experience as a human. And what I've learned is I wasn't always this way, because at the beginning I was a little bit more of an angry new atheist, liked to debate, liked to be that guy that said, no, you're wrong. And then a friend of mine was deconstructing very quickly and ended up having a suicide attempt. And it really shocked me, because I was like, oh shit, maybe there are some ethics I need to consider for just like blowing up people's frameworks. Maybe like pushing people into the void when they don't have the tools to handle it, and they end up ending their life or getting into an addiction or something like that. Maybe there's some ethics to consider there. And I started to think about that more and pull back. And one of the examples that's often used in the atheist spaces is the concept of free will. There's some evidence, and Daniel Dennett talked about this when he was alive, but let's just say that it's true. There's some studies that contradict this, but let's say it's true that when people learn that they don't have free will, morality goes down significantly because people feel like if I steal this, it's just the universe stealing it. It's not me because I don't have free will, right? That can be, until you really work philosophically with this concept, that can be your first response. And so the question then becomes in atheist spaces, do we tell society and keep telling everyone you don't have free will if we could know for sure that morality in the society would go significantly down? And some atheists are more likely to just say, hey, if it's true, it's true. I don't care the consequences. And some atheists are more likely to say, like, hey, there's ethics to be involved here, even when we're talking about truth. And so where I ended up with that is, I don't lie, I'm not dishonest. But I want religion to get better for the people that are in it, and I want secularism to get better for the people that are in it. And I think there's ethics to consider on both sides. I think that I try to help people who are in the void, but I don't think that it's ethical to push someone there because you can't know that that's going to be good for them. And if that has negative consequences in them and their family for generations, then I think those are ethics that we have to consider. So I'm not a fan of just truth at all cost with no kind of consideration for ethics and well-being. I think that is, I just don't see that as the way to go. I think the better way to go is as much truth as possible within the boundaries of ethics and well-being. I think that has, and when Alex O'Connor asked Sam Harris this, if you could know that we wouldn't survive the death of God, if you could know that we wouldn't survive the decline of religion and we're just going to descend into worse states of nihilism, what would you do? Like, what matters more to you, truth or well-being? And I remember Sam Harris and Alex O'Connor both said, if I could know that we wouldn't improve our well-being by leaving religion, then I would pull my books off of the shelf because well-being has to matter more than truth. So there's some debate in there, and it's complicated and it's nuanced and there's lots of gray, but as best I can, I really try to tell as much truth as possible with consideration to ethics. And I feel like that's the best way to marry not just not just truth, but also experience of what it is to be human, which I don't want to leave either.
Yeah. Okay, I cut you off only because the topic of the child and the death of his dog, and then my friend was a real life experience. What other examples do you have
of like different ethical scenarios?
Yeah, I'm sure you have something.
Yeah. I mean, the one that comes up a lot that I get in my comments is, what do I do about my mom? She's 85 and she's trying to, she's still religious. Do I combat her about her religious beliefs in order to tell her the truth? And she's 85 years old, and I get a lot of that question. And so, for me, it's the same as with the 5-year-old, that it may not be developmentally appropriate for that 5-year-old to see all of the suffering and destruction. So, for example, for 5-year-olds, it's really good for kids to have bad guys be bad guys and good guys be good guys. And when you're adults, we have bad guys with a backstory and good guys that are flawed because, we can handle the complexity. But actually, we know with children, the best thing when they're 7 years old is that the bad guy is just bad. That is actually most developmentally appropriate for them. And so I think it's important to consider truth not as this absolute thing, but as something that is contextual in the human experience. The best thing that I can tell for this kid is that Batman is good and, the Joker is bad. And that will actually help that child be able to get to that nuanced space later in life where the Joker has a backstory and Batman is somewhat problematic. And you know what I mean? And so, and same thing with the 85-year-old mom. Like, is it developmentally appropriate for your relationship for the last year of her life to just be arguing with her about religion? That might not be developmentally appropriate or lead to well-being for either one of you. That doesn't mean you have to lie. I never advocate just lying. But is there a way that you can connect to your mom human to human underneath her beliefs that separate you?
Well,
so I just like
lying?
I just like to keep it contextual because that keeps me in safe ethics.
Okay, I want to poke you on the line.
Yeah, please.
Okay, because we just talked about nihilism. Okay, if we know, like, if we gone down the dark alley and we see, okay, really, ultimately, there's There's no string puller. There's nobody who's looking at you going, you told a white lie. You're holding yourself to that standard. You know what I mean? Of saying, I'm not going to lie. This is my ethics. This is something. But like your mother's on her way out, let's say, and she's only got a year. And it's not just like, do I want to dispute with her why her religion is made up? It's like, is she has a sense of comfort psychologically believing heaven is on the other side of that door. And you have a chance. What's more ethical? Taking that gradually away from her in some gentle nudge that you can have this conversation of like, I'm not going to lie, or leaning into it for her psychological comfort as she's exiting to the other door when there is nothing on the other side of that other door, but it helps her in her dying moments. I'm okay with white lies. I'm not like
This is great. This is a fantastic little rabbit hole we're down. Yeah. So for me, there's the consideration of her and her well-being, which at her part of her life just may not be the best thing for her to try to go through a whole deconstruction and all of that. But you also have to consider your own psyche. Yeah. And we do pay a cost for lying. In our own psyche. The reason that lie detectors can work, and not always, but can work, is because when we lie, we have a physiological response, right? Yeah. And so there is a great value, and people underestimate this, sometimes leaving religion because we've had this God framework for a long time. But people are surprised that I'll tell them, if I could steal $1 million and do it in a way that's really unethical, like I really screwed someone over or something, but I could know for sure that I'll never get caught by the law, no one will ever find out, and God will never punish me for it, I still wouldn't do it. And when you're coming from a religion, you're like, why? Like, there's no God, just like take the money, who cares? And for me, like, okay, you do that. And when you're in that mansion that you bought with your $1 million, which I guess $1 million doesn't even buy mansions anymore, but whatever, you would always have to be distracted. The TV would always have to be on because you've lost a little bit of your ability to look at yourself in the mirror and to sit with yourself and have to have a really positive relationship with all the different aspects of your psyche. So for me, like, I'm trying to hold two things at once. It's the ethics of her and her well-being, and it's also the ethics of my own psyche. Can I sit with myself, and can I be honest with myself? Can I have a positive relationship with myself? Can people know, like, can my children have trust in me because they know that I just don't lie, and they know that that's a core value of mine? If I tell them something and they say, you promise, and I say, I promise, they know that they can take that to the bank, right? So I think for ethics, you have to balance. It's this balance between authenticity to yourself and also belonging to other people and belonging to the community. And that creates, like, you know, a tightrope walk a little bit. How can I show up for my mom in a way that supports her well-being without betraying my own well-being? And if you can find a situation to do both, I think you're in pretty good ethical grounds. But if I were to full on lie to her or find ways to do lies to other people, I think it would start to show up in my ability to really be at peace in my own head and my own psyche.
Yeah, I think it's a super complicated, like, and super nuanced situation. Like, you turned it on its head with me and made it into robbing a bank or taking advantage of someone. That wasn't the analogy I was aiming at, of course.
Yeah.
And your point is, as well, if you make the pattern or behavior of telling lies, therefore you're going to end up becoming a liar, or there might be consistent ethical boundaries you're willing to break. I'm thinking, they're in the hospital, they're at the end. And the only thing that makes them think in some way calms them down is to believe in the fairy tale. And to me, I almost thought about it too. When you said all that, I'm thinking to myself, I could probably think of scenarios, which I didn't prepare for any of these. It's like, I could probably think of a scenario where lying is almost like a noble sacrifice you're doing for that person. Like, you could come up with hypotheticals, I'm sure, where
I'm sure you could get me on one where, like, yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Like, one for me that I got called out on is I went to both Christmas and Easter church with my extended Mormon family. And some atheists who followed me were very upset by this. Like, how dare you walk into that building? How dare you support them? Like, how dare you, like, you're such a hypocrite about how, like, all the problems of Mormonism, and there you are with your family in your dress, like, going to church. Like, like, people feel really betrayed by, I'm an Easter Christian, or I'm an Easter Christmas Mormon. And I tell people that, hey, showing up for my friends and family that I care about is part of my authenticity too. That's part of my authenticity too. So in that situation, you telling your mom whatever you feel comfortable telling, the mom who's in the hospital, that's actually part of your authenticity too. So
Yeah,
you
that's
could
what I
make
mean.
scenarios like that. But my important thing is, just because I'm at the church does not mean I'm going to go up to the pulpit and say, I know this church is true. I know the Book of Mormon is true. Like, I'm not going to do that. But
Yeah.
will I go and show up with my family? Like, yeah, because I can show up in a way that doesn't betray myself, because I'm not going to say anything that I don't believe.
Right.
But it's also important to me to show up for people that I care about, because that's part of my authenticity too.
I have a real life scenario. I want to get your
Okay.
take on this. All right,
Okay.
judge me all you want. I don't mind. You can judge the shit out of me. You can say, no, Derek, that was wrong. I don't care. All right. My wife's best friend, she literally has her tattooed on her hip. Beautiful girl, passed away, drug addiction, overdose. I mean, clearly you could tell we've come from a pretty rough, I think a lot of us in America, I don't know, I can't judge everybody's situations, but I think addiction is a serious epidemic.
Yeah, my brother was a heroin addict and is in and out of his own recovery.
Yeah, I hope he beats it. I'm sorry to hear that. She overdosed. They found her in a car in the fetal position, completely lifeless, cold. I don't know if she got a patch of fentanyl, whatever happened. She dies. I'm working construction. I've deconstructed now. I'm in this kind of phase where I don't believe the Bible's God anymore. Like, I'm not quite atheist, and I haven't come out that way. But I definitely don't believe it. Like, I'm not a believer in the Bible's God. Okay. It's like this phase that I'm in. It's this short window. My wife's best friend's parents said, Derek, nobody knows the Bible in my life as much as you. Like, you know the Bible more than anyone we know. You are very much into Jesus and believe in God. Will you come and will you just like give the eulogy real quick? And in my mind, I'm at work at a construction site in the middle of North Carolina, in like middle nowhere, heavy equipment, managing men, trying to install I-beams in the ground for solar panels and all that. And I'm like, sure. All I got to do is like one quick speech about, her. And so anyway, the time comes. I go to the funeral. My wife and I walk through the door. My wife gives me like some paperwork together that has Bible passages. As I walk through the door, they're like, hey, nice to meet you. The guy who runs the building. And I said, I'm Derek Lambert. He goes, oh, Pastor Lambert, welcome. Okay. I walked into this and didn't know. I had no freaking clue. Pastor Lambert, come here. The family's in the back waiting for you. And I'm like, okay, maybe they're like, I don't know what they misappropriated me as like a pastor. Like, I'm going to go back here with the family. And as soon as I walk back there, there's a whole circle of the whole family. It's like 20, 30 people. And they're like, oh, you're here. I grab their hands and they're like, lead us out in prayer. Like, now I have to say a prayer. I'm literally praying to this God that I like. It all was like riding a bicycle. You know how to do it, but I don't believe that there's really this guy who's receiving my message upstairs. Okay. So I say this prayer and they're all like, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for showing up. And I'm comforting all of them, like just being there. And they like look at, this is the weirdest time, the only time in my life I ever felt like I could imagine why power gets to the head of pastors and stuff, because they're looked at just by the title alone as superior. Okay. Then I got to go into the chapel in front of 100 some people. And by the way, I know how to talk in front of hundreds of people here online, but like you get me in front of on a stage, I'm like about to pass out. Like I'm freaking out. Like I got to get over the fear, I guess, of public speaking. But anyway, so I'm standing there speaking and I'm reading the notes my wife put. They're all Bible notes. And I'm just preaching kind of sort of from the Bible, like reading these passages, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, all these things. And then finally, like, we got to play a song, her favorite song. It was like a Garth Brooks song, She's Fire and Wind or something. I don't know. And then I got to speak without any notes. And I just was like, that's when the authenticity kicked in. And I was like, listen, she's at peace now. If there's one thing I know, she is not suffering anymore. And that is where I could see the connection from the audience. Like they could see that I felt like they could see the most authentic came out. But I gave this like hour-long thing combining the prayer and everything. And I'll tell you, I never felt more uncomfortable in my entire life than doing this. But I did it. And then on the local newspaper, Pastor Lambert led the funeral. I'm in the freaking local newspaper as a pastor and I'm a heretic. So anyway, what are your thoughts about that?
Okay. I want to couch this
Judge me.
I want to couch this by saying first that, you know, what may betray me may not be the same things that betray you, right? Like, as far as that authenticity piece, like some things you were willing to, like, we all have to give up some authenticity for community. If you only have authenticity, you're just a steamroller. Like, you can't be in community with other people. So the ethics here is, how can I make sure that I stay authentic to myself while also being in community? So for me personally, I've done things that were more the second part of that message there, where you were able to say she's at peace, and maybe that means something to them, but that means something different to you, so that you feel like you can authentically say that. I've done that before. So I have performed weddings just as a it's not a humanist chaplain, it's a humanist celebrant. I got my celebrant license so you could marry people. And some people prefer to be married with religious language involved at some level. And so I'll do that in a way where, like, yeah, I can bring in this story, or I can bring in the scripture. It doesn't bother me that it's coming from the Bible, because the message is something that I really stand behind. Like, the message of what I'm doing, I'm really doing in an authentic way. And if I have to use a few scriptures to get there, that doesn't bother me. So I definitely can do that and have done that. I probably wouldn't have done the first part, where, you know, I'm going into scriptures, and especially if it talked about afterlife and things like that, without if I didn't believe in those things. Because
what
for
if it
me,
was all launched on you? Like, I did not.
yeah,
know.
like in a high pressure situation like that, like I may have just caved and just been like,
that's what I did.
I'm just trying to survive. Like, I don't even care about the ethics right now. I could see myself doing that, but I would hope that I would be able to reframe. So if there was something about how they're still alive, I would say, for me, what this means is that as long as we remember her, and the things that, you know, she reminds us that life is precious, and as long as we remember that, she's still alive in us here. So I hope that I would have, even on the spot, been able to curb some of those scriptures in a way that I could do it in a way that was really authentic to what I believe and who I am. And I have done that in the past. It is hard to do on the fly like that. It would be really uncomfortable to do that on the fly, but I think I'd be able to still couch most of that language in some kind of way that I can meet it in an authentic way, and still offer that offering that you gave to these people who were grieving, but in a way that didn't make you go home and feel disconnected to yourself. But tough situation, man. Tough situation.
Yeah, I did feel a little like, I mean, I didn't even prepare. I had no time to even prepare. I'm out here in the field. I came home washed up that evening because I'm all week gone, and then had to go straight to the building. I did not expect that. I just wanted to paint a scenario for you to get thoughts. But
so another example is, like, I was in a mixed faith marriage for a while, and my 8-year-old was getting baptized in the Mormon church by his dad. And I kind of wrote they're called talks in Mormonism, like what people were going to say. So this is all very religious. Like, I don't believe any of this. I don't believe that baptism is capital R real, but this is a ritual. My whole Mormon family is going to be there to celebrate this 8-year-old becoming part of the community. And so I wrote, like, with Mormon friendly language, something that I could authentically say. And I had my mom read it or whatever. And so, like, yeah, I've been in marriages. I've been a part of baptisms where I'm interacting with the language as best I can, because this community is really important to me. And we all have to, you know, navigate that when we're in community. But I try my best to do it in a way that doesn't make me come home and feel disconnected with myself, because then that means I went a little too far.
Yeah. Okay. So we've navigated quite a bit of information here. We didn't bring up a lot of, like, the statistic sheets. I didn't want to bore people with, like, here's the data. Like, if they have any questions, I think they should watch your original video, which I pinned here in the chat, so they could go watch some of your content that you actually talk about these things. Ritual and the practices of singing together, all the meaning, and all these things that you have put under the umbrella of spirituality. Is there anything we didn't touch before we get to super chats that we should touch on this?
Let's touch on how sometimes I did a post the other day that people got really mad at, which is how sometimes when we deconstruct from religion, we're deconstructing the religion, but we haven't yet deconstructed tribalism, and how we take that into the secular space and the way that holds us back. So I did a post a few days ago that said, if everybody is, like, embracing authenticity after religion, Why do we all start a podcast, start drinking coffee and alcohol, get a tattoo, and dye our hair blue? Like, why is there a specific look for people who are deconstructing? If we're all saying that we're just being authentic now, why do we all start looking and sounding the same and start having the same kind of heroes and start watching all the same YouTube videos and start having the same narratives? And there starts to be things that you can't say in those communities. Some things that we've even said here are things that you can't say in those communities, like spirituality. And I just kind of want to point out that for me, I think there's such a disservice happening in the atheist and secular communities where we can't talk about, for example, spiritual experience because there's no language for it. That starts to feel not just limiting, but culty in its own way. Where people start kind of gatekeeping the community. So the example that I use is that, 2/3 of atheists who have some kind of transcendent experience where they feel at one with God or at one with nature or at one with the universe, if they have that kind of experience on ayahuasca, DMT, psilocybin, that they will not feel like self-identifying like atheists after that. And it's not because they believe in God or that they go back to church or they go back to Abrahamic religion. They never do that. They just feel that in the atheist space, like it tends to be just culturally that all we're doing is just talking about how religion is stupid and evil. And if you talk about this transcendent experience that you had on mushrooms, where your sense of self got really small and you just felt connected to something bigger than you, whatever you want to call it. If you can't be at a table of atheists and talk about that without getting mocked in the community, then what happens is these people just have no language to describe this experience except for in religion. And I just think that does the secular project a disservice if we give religion and spirit and the spiritual spaces that kind of monopoly, where we just never are able to talk about transcendent experience because we're so afraid, like it's just not allowed in the cult of atheism. Like we can't even bring it up. So now, like after you do mushrooms, you can't even call yourself an atheist anymore because you did mushrooms and had an experience. This is one of the reasons why I want to bring spirituality into the conversation, is because it gives us a place in secularism to talk about these experiences, to talk about rebuilding family culture, to talk about how are you doing moral education with your kids, to talk about how are you doing rituals with your kids, how are you how are you adjusting to all this. And so I just do want to talk about how sometimes we have to watch out in the secular community. How are we becoming, if not a religion, at least acting like a tribe, acting like a religion? Who are the prophets that you're not allowed to, talk bad about? Who are, what are the things that you're not allowed to say? Yeah. What are the ways that we're cutting off human experience because we don't want to seem like those guys? What are the ways that we're looking like each other and sounding like each other? What are the tripwires that are in this place? Because I think if we call out religion for all of that tribalism, we also have to be honest about how and when that happens in the secular community too.
I feel like there are 100% trained, bona fide expert heresy hunters in the atheist world. And to discuss the things you're discussing, it is heresy in a sense to do those things. And
heresy for me on both sides, right? Like I'm getting it from both sides. So I know that I'm in a very unpopular space. It's just I'm just doing what I do, but I'm getting the heresy from both sides for sure.
Yeah. You're a heretic on both sides. And the welcomeness that I think you have seen isn't received by large portions of the community. And there's a sense in which there's a poisoning of the well of you. Your character is seen through the lens of how that's being portrayed by some of the very important figures that are in this arena. I think that's unfortunate that it's monopolized by a few individuals who have such power they can get away with almost saying anything, and they're going to have an echo chamber.
And what about this like movement of people? We talked about this off air. Of people are starting to call themselves agnostic. They're still atheists. Yeah. They just are so annoyed by that certain loud group of like atheists that they're calling themselves agnostic because they don't want to be associated with that brand of atheism that can get quite toxic, to be honest.
That's unfortunate because I mean, by definition, you can the two are separate, right? Like an
Yeah.
atheist and agnostic is the knowledge claim. So you don't, you could be both, but they just are. A lot of people are like, listen, can we get back to being gentle, kind, even to those who we once were,
Yeah.
and not just. But there's also the toxicity within our own communities that just becomes like, I really want to welcome people where they're at. It's like, come as you are kind of thing. The famous Christian statement we used to say,
Yeah.
come as you are and we'll take you and we'll work with you. But like, it's difficult, I think, when you're trying to organize. When you're trying to organize, you're now going to kind of almost want everyone under an umbrella to agree to certain stipulations, to certain check these boxes, and then you're welcome in our community. If you don't check these boxes or you don't agree to our particulars, what we expect as our group seems to be overall, our tribe says, and by the way, I've seen this firsthand. Like, if you don't do, let's ask the community first. If the community agrees, then you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
I already know the community will never accept certain things. I already know.
Mm-hmm.
But I personally don't feel like I need to be controlled by a community. Like, there's no community that needs to tell me what I can and cannot say or who I'm allowed to speak to, whatever. That kind of stuff happens as well. So it's very difficult.
Yeah, it's very hard, and it's hard on both sides, and I just never wanna be the type of person that I'm only making fun of tribalism in religion, because like you, like I that's part of me too, and that's part of my story too, and it happens in my own community, and I'm just very wary of, like, I understand, like, atheists want to have the high road and their arguments are better and they're smarter and all these things, and that is great. But if people aren't calling themselves atheists because they don't want to be associated with you because you're acting like assholes,
Yeah.
then that is not doing a service to the secular community. You're losing people in that way, especially
Yeah.
women who just don't feel very safe in some of these spaces.
Yeah. I'm sorry that has happened to you. It's happened to me quite
Yeah.
often as well, not as a female, but
Yeah.
I have felt
Where
that
where
way.
you hit one of those tripwires of, like, you're not allowed to say that and be part of the club.
Yeah, I lost my cool, like, really emotionally, and I felt attacked, and of course got really angry and upset, made a video which I took down about 10 months ago, where I called it initially, I'm done with the online atheist cult. Some of the people that were involved in some of the project that I did weren't even atheists. Some of them were like polytheists, but they check off all the boxes and were welcome in the atheist community. I've seen them in the circles. They're, all, and I just felt completely pressured and attacked and all of these things. And um it's unfortunate that that's how humans are. Because I
Yeah.
thought when
Mhm.
I thought when I was going to leave Christianity, we learned we don't do that to people. We don't excommunicate people. We don't have these heresy purity tests that you don't check off our doctrines and theologies, and therefore we're gonna ruin you. And by the way, we're gonna ruin you because you're going to be associated with someone who holds ideas we disagree with. So you get the cooties secondhand. It's not you have those cooties, it's they have cooties and you're associated with them. So the kind of cult behavior you had within Christianity is they teach you, like in Jehovah's Witnesses, I imagine the Mormons do too, you can't be friends with those worldly people.
Yeah.
If
Mhm.
Well, if you know a Mormon who's friends with a worldly person, they're not right, and they're going to get in trouble in the cult. That happens in our circles as well. And
Yeah.
I noticed that I thought that wasn't ever going to happen. I thought, okay, no, what ends up happening was humans are humans, and
Yeah.
they're not immune to the same exact issues that the religious have as well. And in my mind, I went, well, what the hell? At that point, when I had been like, I felt forsaken in a sense, or crucified by the crowds that I was involved in, and even to this day, some are terrified to even come on my channel with me. Why? They tell me the anxiety they have is through the roof
Mm.
because they're afraid of what the community will do to them. They
Mhm.
won't even come on my channel.
Mhm.
They're afraid. They're
Mhm.
scared of even showing up.
And this shows up, obviously in the political landscape too. Like, there's been things that I've been much more scared to say with a group of people on the left than saying something off narrative for people on the right, because people on the right tend to have a little bit more space to say, like, hey, as long as you're on my team, I can handle that you have a different opinion on this. But like, you hit some of those tripwires on the political left, and yeah, that can be even if you're just asking questions and you're not even really disagreeing, that can be a very scary space where people will be like, I don't want to talk about this, or I can't talk about this, or I'm going to get excommunicated from, the political left, or I'm going to get excommunicated from the atheist space. And I just think that we need to be honest about that happening in our own community and call that out when it's happening, because I just think that if we're about well-being, then we critique religion to make religion better, because it does respond to critique and it does change with critique. We have some evidence of that. And we want secularism to get better for the people who are in that, and build up things on the secular side and build up more third spaces and community and resources and
It
all
should
that.
change too, then. It should
And so, like, as long as you're a part of both projects here, like, we don't need to excommunicate people from one side or the other. I just want everyone to be if you're engaging and trying to make religion better by critiquing it, and you're engaged in trying to make secularism better and support it, then, like, you're on my team. Like, I don't have to excommunicate you just if you have a different opinion or approach or place in that world than me. And we have to call out some of that tribalism that's happening in our own community, or else we're hypocrites.
Yeah, I agree. And I think everybody has hypocrisy, and all groups will end up having it. And I mean, you have favorites too, right? So someone you might like that's closer to you might defend in a certain situation that might have happened. Okay, real quick. I want to get to Ayaan Hirsi Ali real quick. Okay, because you brought it right and left, and she's a well-known, not only atheist, or was atheist, but also politically driven. And you recently mentioned her on your video, how she has to split her mind in two. And I know that a lot of people, I did a video when she first did this, by the way, and I'm like, I think the truth is more important. If you go back and watch, you could see me actually going, she needs the truth. The truth is Jesus didn't rise from the dead, but she believes it now, right? A lot of people question her authenticity. Okay, they question her narrative. They question, I get it. I did the same thing with Joseph Smith. When I first evaluated him, I thought, he's a bullshitter. He's looking at a hat. He's saying he can find things through magic, and he can, like, treasure hunter, all this stuff. He's just a liar. Everything is all a lie. Okay. Then I found out that humans are not that black and white, and that humans are so much messier, that Joseph Smith likely believes a lot of stuff that he's actually saying.
And he's an interesting philosopher, and he was ahead of his time in some ways. And,
right.
I have to give him that.
Yeah. At the end of the day, I thought, he's easy to target. This guy's a con artist from start to end. And then you realize it's not that simple. It's way messier.
Someone in the comments says, please don't tell me you think he was more than a charlatan. Any human is more than just a charlatan.
Yes.
He was absolutely a charlatan.
Of course.
Like, absolutely, like, solid evidence that
no doubt.
Knew that he was lying and he was taking money for treasure hunting and all of this. Absolutely.
So
was he just a charlatan?
Nothing more. See?
No,
so yeah.
To me, no. Like, he was also a philosopher of sorts.
He was superstitious. This guy really did believe in some stuff. Okay. This is my
point. The guy said, okay, I will calm down. Sorry.
It's all good. Yeah. No, this is good. Because I think this is relevant to the Ayaan Hirsi Ali thing, because when we don't agree with something, or we find faults in it, it's easy to look for everything has to be charlatan, and there's no authenticity to his life at all.
It's just not how humans are. That's like, it's just not how humans are, that they just wake up and everything that they say is a lie. Every word that they say is a lie, and they only do bad, or they only do good. Like, just no human is like that. And I don't like any time that you're treating a human as if they're less human than you, like they're less complex than you, then I think you've lost the plot, somewhere.
I think it's easy for our brains to categorize it that way, but it's not the reality. And so Ayaan Hirsi Ali, I read when she came out, I read the article after I did my video. I was like, let me go see what she says about her own experience. She clearly points out, and she did it in her discussion with Richard Dawkins, which everybody watched. If you haven't watched it, go watch it after this video if you're interested in knowing more. She says, yes, on one hand, the secular world is not even close to combating Islam, which, by the way, her personal experience was a horrific form of this, where little children, girls, have their, I don't know if I can you say that on YouTube?
Yeah.
Clitoris cut off. Okay. So she was mutilated as a child in Islam. And I can't imagine all the other abuses that come along with such a really staunch, religion like that in where she grew up. So she has a clear chip on her shoulder for reasons that are justified against Islam. And she says that When it came to the secular world critiquing Islam, which you do find a lot of them hesitant to even make debunk videos, and like you'll find some that are willing to debate it, but you'll see Christians are doing it all day long. Okay. The Christian world she saw that was doing that obviously was more powerful in its accomplishment in fighting the evil that she finds in Islam. Also, though, she talks about the existential crisis that she had, the meaning, the lack of meaning. And I don't doubt that she had sincere. People were going, oh, it's all the political. It's all the, it must be only the hate for Islam. And I think, again, bringing in Joseph Smith, think like that. She's more than just, oh, I only have one agenda. I imagine there's a complexity to her where she's not finding all the purpose and meaning and value she was getting from the secular world. So now she's jumping ship because there's no spirituality discussion of these things. And her own psychologist is telling her, like, hey, have you tried, spirituality? I mean, like, you're clearly lacking some of these more deep, I guess you'd say, tools to tap into to help you through this crisis. Now, I thought maybe she's purely doing this for political reasons, and I kind of hint that in my video, and I said Jesus didn't rise from the dead, so we need to go with what's true and not someone who has an axe to grind. What are your thoughts about Ayaan Hirsi Ali in light of that?
Yeah, so I definitely think the political piece is there, and she has been very clear about not seeing secularism as able to combat Islam, and that's a whole debate, and there's interesting points on both sides of that. But that's politics is just outside my realm of expertise there. So I want to focus on the existential crisis piece, because she really went into a dark kind of existential depression. And existential depression is different than clinical depression. So, for example, cognitive behavior therapy we know is pretty effective for traditional depression. It can help you kind of reframe your negative thought loops. But with existential depression, it does not tend to be as effective, because if you're in an existential depression and you're just trying to think better thoughts, you almost feel like you're just gaslighting yourself when you're really struggling with meaninglessness and purposelessness and these deep ethical problems about consenting to be alive. And if you just try to think happier about it or reframe your thoughts, it feels like gaslighting yourself, and it tends not to stick because you don't have a deeper philosophy for that to stick to. You don't have a deeper way of interacting with the world yet. You don't have, any narrative there. So even though the political thing is definitely an aspect, there was also a sense where I feel bad that when she's asked, like, do you really believe that Jesus rose from the dead? And what she says, this is her words, not mine, is that she puts her science brain over here and her religious brain over here. So scientifically, she may have a lot of doubts and issues with the resurrection. And like you say, like, it's not true. But over here, she has this Christian side of her now that is playing with that, because she's then getting the tools from Christianity that helped her in her existential crisis. And so the reason that that story made me so sad was not because, like, oh no, someone became a Christian and that's the most terrible thing. No, what made me sad about that is I'm so sad that in order for her to get tools for her existential crisis, she had to split her brain in half and split her psyche in two in order to walk into a Christian church to get some tools that she was needing that wasn't readily available in secularism when we talk about deep existential meaning crisis kind of stuff. And she was in therapy and it wasn't enough for her. And so she ends up just going back to religion. And so that just makes me sad. Like, if she was thriving in religion and saw Jesus, I feel like I would have accepted that story more of like, okay, I guess you saw Jesus and good luck being Christian. But what made me sad about the story is like, oh, you had to compartmentalize your psyche in order to get tools. And for me, I just don't feel like I have to do that. All the tools that she was getting from Christianity, I feel like I've built into my life ground up, and I don't have to even play with the idea that Jesus resurrected from the dead, that there was a literal virgin birth. I don't have to do any of that, which gives me a lot more internal wholeness. And I wish she would have had more opportunities, which to me is a little bit of a failure, or recognizing how far we still have to go in the secular community to not just get people out of religion, but actually replace all the things that religion is and all the reasons why we co-evolved with it in the first place.
Well said. Well said. I don't know why my mind went right back to psilocybin mushrooms and all that stuff, to just thinking about the significance that I had from my experience from it. Um, I had this internal awareness of things and was able to think about things in a way that I never could. You could not ever. I don't know. Maybe you could meditate yourself into a trance, into that place, but I've never been capable of doing such a thing. I've never experienced anything like that in my life, and it, even in a non, like, I wasn't under like someone who knew what they were doing, was like walking me through and talking me through. No, no, no. By myself, I was doing this in like, let's have fun and take some mushrooms tonight. And I did it. And I was having some really like experiences you can't describe into words easily, but also a way of seeing myself and how I needed to improve myself that I couldn't see before. So I didn't like go and see the all father in heaven and Odin was there and it wasn't Jesus or something. But um it feels like this is something Jordan Peterson brought up actually in a debate when he was debating Matt Dillahunty about this. And
Yeah, about transcending yourself like that can be really great for addiction.
yeah, and I want to say that I actually agree with Matt over against the, like, this is evidence for God argument that seemed to be like he was missing with that one. Obviously, Jordan wasn't winning with that. I
Mhm.
think if Jordan would have phrased it differently,
Mhm.
then we could have gotten somewhere better. But instead, he used it as like, this is proof for God. And it's like, no,
Yeah.
it's proof that
It's
life can
proof
change.
it's proof that some experiences can lead to certain changes in behavior. That's what it proves. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, Jordan goes too far by always trying to make that thing God.
exactly. Well, he also then like changes
But
the
Jordan talks
definition.
about he talks about honestly, and I have a video on this, that he publicly has said he has a deep fear of nihilism. And so for him, holding on to that last piece of God is like, for him, like keeping him from nihilism, which he's afraid of.
Ah, okay. I got that's on your YouTube channel.
I do a thing
Okay.
on I do my own kind of like I take out some of the stuff that he's said, about nihilism, because it came out in the Jordan Peterson, Sam Harris debates that Sam Harris, was much more worried about fundamentalism, but then Jordan much more afraid of nihilism. And he is somewhat neurotic, has his own issues with some drugs.
Yeah.
He also studied like really dark things, like dark dictators and things like that. He has some demons, and he has some fears about the void and nihilism. And like, from what I understand of what he said, is that, keeping something a little bit more structured with God, rather than just like, hey, having an experience can lead to changes in behavior, for him is like his last bastion against full nihilism, which would be very dangerous for his personality type.
That is pretty wild. Personality types play a role. I think the unfortunate part of that debate about the mushrooms is the takeaway
Mm.
that many atheists who follow Matt, because Matt's an authority within that community, are never going to take mushrooms. Probably in light of this, they're going to look at it like it's nothing. Oh, what the hell? Ha ha ha! Mushrooms, because, well, this guy's acting like it's going to make you think God is real or God is proof for
Yeah,
God.
like people in that space will say it's just a hallucination. Like, why are you getting some kind of truths about reality? Like, you're just hallucinating. And it's like, okay, like, yeah, like you're gonna maybe like see some things or whatever, but you're also like, you're turning down the default mode network in your brain. You're accessing other parts of your brain. And you can learn things from your subconscious space. Like, there's still room there to experience something, even if you see a dragon and that's not capital R real. Like, we have to have space for these kinds of human experiences.
Yeah, yeah. That just sucks. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people, you walk away thinking, well, mushrooms lost, screw mushrooms. And it's like, well,
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
something fun there that I think people should explore. I don't want to keep you forever. I have super chats, but I didn't know if there was something else you really needed
I'm
to.
I'm good. Let's keep rolling. We'll do some super chats, and then yeah, we'll wrap up here. But
Okay.
yeah, what was I just gonna say about mushrooms? You find a super chat while I'm thinking.
Okay.
Um it was something.
Bakken, thank you so much for being a member. All religions
Mm.
come from the indigenous cannabinoid system. Anatamine releases during religious experiences. It causes excitement like speaking in tongues. I experienced the same phenomena smoking herb. Thank you, Bakken. Appreciate you for being a member and always coming through with support of what we're doing here. I hallucinated one time smoking after trying to get off pills. It was like 5 years no weed, and I smoked a whole blunt. was like $20 of hydroponic, we called it at the time. And I remember going to about 1.5 miles from home and smoking with Ryan. We got Tupac and Biggie on the speakers jamming. And she's like, and passes. I'm like, that's it? She's like, yeah, I'm good. I'm like, I'm going all out. Dude, I'm driving home. I look over and I'm in the passenger seat where she's at. Like I'm tripping. I'm like, oh my God, I grabbed the steering wheel and I go, something's wrong. She goes, what's wrong? You're freaking me out. I'm like,
you probably shouldn't have been driving.
Shouldn't have been driving.
Yeah. No, I was going to say about the mushrooms that I'm jealous that you had a very positive mushroom experience, because I've done them many times, probably about 10 times. And 100% of the time I go to hell, like just some aspect of like, I must be just neurotic all the way down to the core, because I just go to some new aspect of hell every time. And I'm just over there on my rug, just crying. But I always feel like it's good for my depression. So I do it about every 6 months, because it's, I still feel better the next day, but I always tend to find some new thing to suffer about. So I'm jealous.
Well, I've had bad and good.
Yeah,
so
I have all bad.
My first experience, I had to have taken a hero's dose. Like I think it was like 4 or 5 grams. It was like a whole, I did like my hands were full and I ate them all. And, I didn't even know I was barefoot, right? Walking in the streets all night with my buddies. And, the next day I couldn't walk. My feet, I clearly didn't know that I was like hurting. My legs were hurting. My feet were hurting walking the roads on the barefoot on concrete. Wow. Yeah. I've had a few bad ones though.
Someone said in the comments, Britt, what fresh hell is this? And that is my experience. But what I did the last time that I had a trip is I've been working really hard on the 4 existential fears: fear of death, fear of meaninglessness, fear of isolation, fear of freedom. It would be really fun to do an episode on the 4 existential fears, by the way. We should do that next time. And so I'm like, okay, I think like I've covered it all. Like there shouldn't be anything else. And then my last trip, because I've made peace with capital D death, but that last trip I was making peace with like lowercase d death, where like I had to bury my friends, and then like the part of me that comes out with that friend kind of died with them. Or the last time that, my dad just got diagnosed with Alzheimer's, like the last time he wore the pair of shoes that he always wore, or that he says my name, and like making peace with that. It's not just the end, like it's also decline and you lose things along the way. So I still haven't gotten to the bottom of the barrel, but I just always go to hell.
Wow. Yeah. I haven't done it in, a long time. I was thinking about trying microdosing just to calm, because I hear
it didn't really, I tried, it didn't really have an effect on me. So I still do a larger dose for depression from time to time.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe we keep giving each other notes on that as time goes.
I do think the key is like what Ram Dass did is like he, uses LSD and other things to open these doors, and then he learns how to open those doors within his conscious experience and gets off drugs. And because when he went to India, he was just popping LSD all the time to stay in that space until he learned how to. So my approach with psychedelics is, I think it's great, like you said, that like maybe in 20 years of meditation you can have some of these experiences, but that's a long time. So I like using these to like open doors to different ways of being and experience, but then learn how to walk through that door with your conscious sober mind, I think is the best way to go through that.
Yeah. It does. I can't describe it. It does. You cannot think the ways that it can allow you to think, and it's very creative and unique often, without that experience. For me, that was my I was like, whoa, I've never thought this way. I didn't know how to. I don't know how to get there. Did you want to say something on that?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Bakken, thank you so much for the super chat. All religion as well is psyche. Man makes supernatural forces an extension of their own mental and natural forces. The divine family is our higher image.
All religion as well is psyche, man. Okay. So yeah, like this goes into like archetypes. It's almost like sounding like he's talking about here. So I do think, for example, that like, for example, I have a friend who is actually my doctorate professor at at Northwind Theological Seminary. He's a neighbor of mine named Thomas J. Ord. He does open and relational theology. Anyway, lovely man, believes in a God that I don't believe in, but believes in a God of love. And every day he acts as if this God is real, and how can I act in a way of love? And I can't deny that him working with the concept of love and this God of love that he believes in has made him probably the most beautiful human being that I've ever met. Just like has never acted in a way that is not loving. And so there is value in working with archetypes, or as he's saying, psyche or higher image or things like that. Even if my, Tom's God isn't real, his working with that archetype has made him the most beautiful human being that I've ever met. And so again, going back to reclaiming, you can do this in the secular space. Stoicism does some of this. Like imagine the most wise person, how would they act? Do that thing, right? That's a little bit imaginal. I don't think you can see here, but I have some candles here of saints, but it's like Moira Rose from Schitt's Creek and other people like that. Yeah. And I think it's great in the secular world to like reclaim some of that archetype or some of those heroes that you want to embody. And you can still work in that imaginal space and benefit from that, and benefit from working even in mythology and Jungian archetype. And it doesn't have to mean that, his God is real or any of that is real. And so again, that's a place that after some religious deconstruction, maybe you can go back into that saint's place. And who are your saints? And how can you play in this imaginal space that helps you to improve as a person? So there's something there too.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And
so it's all psyche, like that's fine. But like if it's all psyche, then why can't we play in that space?
That's the thing. Like I do think that when you go back natural, you're looking at the natural world, the divinities were natural forces often, the volcano, the storm, the whatever it might be, usually was equated with the divinity. And I think your point, we don't have time today to unpack, I think, where we could go with what you just described. Okay. Because truly, is he making this up? Is this a delusion for him that is a self-delusion that is also then improving his life, well-being? Mm-hmm. Well, is it true though that thing exists? No. And so how do you navigate? This is a question we can navigate. Yeah. And I think that we need to be big boys and girls and recognize that there might be some utility to self-improvement.
There's utility. I've done some meditations where there's utility in imagining a room of people that are wise, and you have a problem, you want to talk to someone. Who would you want to talk to? And let's say it's like Dumbledore or Yoda. And in your head, you kind of pose your question, and then you allow the Yoda to talk back to you or whatever. Now, is this real? No, like this is provably not real, because we know that these are fictional characters. But if through this experience, it helps you to access your own subconscious inner wisdom and makes you help you make a decision, then why can't I play in there? Like, why can't I know that it's not real and still do it anyway, just for the tool of it? Now, some atheists will say, like, you can't do that because Dumbledore's not real. And I'm like, I know it's not real, but it helped me make a decision in my life. And I know that it's not real, but it helped me make a decision in my life. Yeah. And that's where, I know I am heretical as an atheist.
I was going to say, you broke the doctrine of atheism. I'm kidding. Yeah. But seriously, I told my mom when she passes away, whenever that is, I told her, I will talk to you. I said, I will talk to you when you're gone. And she'll be like, well, I'm listening. And just remember, I'm listening. And I'm like, I'll be talking to you. Yeah. I get it. I do get it. And I think because my mom's been my hero in so many ways. So is my dad, but anyway, we should dive into that and like do an episode at some point, like in depth of just like, we can really paint some scenarios there. Okay. S Mill still in the house. Thank you, S Mill. Why would it be important, in quotes, to do anything or persuade anyone of anything or defend your opinion on some issue if there is no free will, self, or volition? Is it just to get along with your non-self?
Yeah, that's more of a free will question. So a lot of people ask, like, if there's no free will, why are you trying to do anything? Because people will say, like, if there's no free will, then no one's going to change their mind. But it's actually the other way around, that like not having free will means that if you get a certain amount of information in a certain combination, that sometimes you don't even know, like your mind will just find itself changed. Like I didn't choose, and you probably didn't choose, Derek, to wake up one day and just say, I don't believe anymore. You just had certain dominoes that fell at certain times, and you found yourself, your mind being changed. So having there be no free will actually means we should be communicating more, because it means that there's certain arguments, there's certain conversations that can have domino effects in people's mind and make people change their mind towards human well-being. So actually having no free will means that we should be having these conversations more, because it means there's something that I could say that maybe could make a domino fall that could lend towards human well-being. But if you had free will, you could just choose that I'm always going to have this belief and I'm never going to change my mind. And I would still be Mormon and you would still be Christian if we had that. So it's actually better that we don't have free will. And it means that we should be talking more. And it means that there is maybe some way that we could create a system where the output is human thriving and human well-being, even if there's no free will. And let's get that system going.
Okay, I hate to take you back into this, but this is nuanced, and I have to play a hypothetical. You just brought up well-being, and I want to make this we can get nuanced, and I don't want a nuanced answer. I want a yes or no. Okay, you can't.
No.
Yes.
Don't make me.
I have.
Oh, it hurts. Listen, it hurts.
You're welcome to pain. Do it to me. You can do it to me. All right.
All right.
I'll give you a free
true
pass.
Trolley problem. I can't say both. Like, okay. A true trolley problem. Okay.
All right. Pretend hypothetically. All right. I'm granting you in the question. I'm not acting like this is real. Okay. Suppose scientists came back and went, listen, the belief that these gods are real, literal belief in the gods and the religions.
I know where you're going and I don't like it. I know.
Statistically actually was positive for well-being in 75%. Like high numbers. We're talking about ridiculously proportionably better to believe the literal nature of them, even if it's false. But that's what the statement on the statistics proved. They could prove it. Or and that's for well-being, okay? Or we go truth, they're false, detrimental to human society, and our project is bullshit. It's kind of what you brought up about Sam Harris. Yes or no? Which are you going for?
I have like so my gut response, my first response is always like truth matters and it should matter. But when I think about it, I end up saying just believe then. Like if that's the real scenario. Yeah.
Right.
The reason that I don't then just give myself to religion because it helps people is because I think still that we can get all the benefits from religion without the trauma that it really does cause. And it helps us to, secular societies are doing much better than religious societies. We have solid data on that. So I don't think that we're in that trolley problem. But if I were in that trolley problem, it'd be difficult for me because truth really matters for me. It's a high core value for me. But, I would have to go with well-being. And if believing in that thing makes a thriving, human, beautiful life, and the other scenario is just everybody's like on drugs because, we can't handle the nihilism of it, then I'd probably just go well-being. But it would be painful. It'd be painful for me. Yeah, I think that's the right thing to do, though, when I think about it.
Feel free to hit me back if you want to during the stream. Any ideas, feel free to. All right, I'll continue. And then if you feel like smacking me in the head, I'm more than welcome. Or you can save it for another show, whatever you want to do. S-Mill, thank you again, S-Mill. Words by their nature are imprecise and layered with meaning. The signs of things, not the things themselves.
Yeah, this is a great point because a problem that we're getting into is sometimes in the secular space, we start talking about language as if it's platonic in some way, as if our language is representing ultimate reality. And it's like, no, like as this person is saying, like our language is imprecise by nature. We are literally doing mouth sounds with each other where there's probably been multiple times in this conversation where a word that I was meaning was not how you received it because you know what I mean? And if you spoke Spanish or something, I would try to speak my broken Spanish to you to try to connect with you. These are just mouth sounds to explain human experience. And we can't get too caught up in trying to make this language somehow eternal and unchanging because that's just not the nature of language anyway.
Exactly. No, that's really well said, and I think it's important that you highlighted that. Esmil, thank you so much. I guess to add to that, just to say, I understand the one thing they got going for them is that, well, it allows woo to enter the conversation. And that's the only thing I think they really have going for them, is that they're so allergic to the woo. And I get it. I mean,
Yeah.
we don't want to have that mixed in with real, actual, rational discussion. But it's like, at what cost?
Yeah, at what
Um,
cost?
yeah, at what
And
cost?
and when I explain to them what I'm doing, like even, even very skeptical people, when I explain my approach and what I'm doing, no one's really bothered by that. And so, like, I understand it may open the door for woo, but if I'm not bringing any woo through that door, then maybe like make some space for for what I'm doing here with this word spirituality, even though I know it's tough.
Yeah, yeah. I hope that it becomes more receptive and not so combative.
And I'm also and I've said before, I was messaging someone earlier who was really unhappy with this word and my use of it, and I always said, like, "Okay, like, give me another word of what to call myself." My education is in theology, my training is in a non-religious spiritual direction program, so I can't call it psychology because 'cause I'm not a psychologist, and whenever I say, like, "Give me a better word for what I'm doing than secular spirituality," no one can ever come up with one. So it's not that I'm not open-minded, like I'm open to a better term that is still ethical, that's getting across what I'm trying to get across. It's just very hard because we're transitioning from these words being in religion to these words not necessarily being in religion.
I also think, though, that part of your program is to take a word that is intentionally in that sphere, which does encompass all of these other categories you're describing. So it's not like you're just using the word because you can't find another word that could potentially fill the gap. There is a sense in which it had this utility within the religious sphere,
Yeah.
and it's a human thing. So you're trying to say, like, look, if before the word pneuma, let's say the Greek language didn't exist and they didn't have a term for the Holy Spirit or spiritual or whatever, humans were still experiencing these things prior to those terms ever being coined by those later. Once they got coined, are we supposed to then stop and that needs to be an extinct term? Or can we not utilize the term that used to describe those experiences in those categories that humans have had for hundreds of thousands of years before the terms even exist? So
Mhm.
I think it's doing a lot of combat on taking back. We could talk about the word love, like love, right? And you go, well, what do you mean by love? Well, we all love to use love. You were talking about love. Your friend talks about a God who's a God of love. But when you do describe love, there is a category within religion about love. And how do the secular world view love? They use the term love, but that word has a lot of baggage that also is related to a lot of reference to God or to gods. There's a lot in relation to love that you could talk about within religion. Again, I'm just making one off the top of my head as an example that we could possibly go down that avenue. And it's like, well, why don't we just use a different term than love so it doesn't get conflated with
Mhm.
God?
And, like,
So,
inventing new words is very difficult to do. Like, I'm open to someday, like, there being a word that means secular all this stuff, but from a secular viewpoint, we just don't have that word, and, it's very difficult to just say, like, "I'm a nobody, and I'm just going to invent a new word." And, like, I think people, I think people underestimate how difficult that is. Words tend to change more than we just invent a new one, especially for something as old as these kinds of human experiences. And then it
gotcha.
disconnects us to our past, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I think that there's pros and there's cons. You
There's
can, you know,
definitely cons, like, I'm not denying the cons, I'm just, doing the best I can with the language limitations.
thank you. Bakken, thank you so much for the super chat. Even atheism is a construct, a belief about constructs. What is reality? It is the living now, ever present now. There is nothing else but the present. All is living now, a multiplicity becoming.
I wouldn't call atheism a belief because it's considered more in philosophy to be a negation, so it doesn't make any positive claims about the nature of reality or the universe. So it's just a negation. I'm not convinced of theistic arguments, so I wouldn't fully call it a belief construct like that. Sometimes in the atheist culture, you can certainly get some constructs, but in its purest form, I wouldn't call it that. But yeah, there's definitely some when you're doing life from the point of view of experience, you never experience anything you never experience non-being, like from the point of view of experience, you live forever because you never experience really anything else. So I
Yeah.
do find value in building life from the point of view of experience. I think there's value in doing that, and you can do that without any beliefs at all. You can do that, in my case, as a full nihilist and still get help, and still, not believe that there's any inherent meaning in the universe.
I meant to ask you before we move to the next super chat, and I'll just pop it up here. You said you're a full nihilist. You said you experienced nihilism, you went in and started studying it, but you still identify as a nihilist. What does that mean now? I mean,
Yeah.
if you looked at the dark
Yeah.
world, I would be like, no, I'm running from that into the light. I'm not going
Yeah.
to stick over here. But you're still a nihilist. What does that
Yeah.
mean for you?
So nihilism is, as an ism, it's just the belief that there's no inherent meaning in the universe. And so there is a difference between pessimistic nihilism and optimistic nihilism. So an optimistic nihilist tends to, by personality, really have freedom as a high core value. And so when they learn that there's no God keeping score, there's no inherent meaning in the universe, they're ecstatic about this. Like, nihilism isn't inherently bad or good. Some personalities, deal with this better than others. And if you just love freedom and you just see life as a blank canvas upon which to paint, then you actually do pretty well in nihilism. I almost never get them as clients because they're doing great without me. Now, pessimistic nihilism is there's no inherent meaning to the universe, and then I have no meaning, and there's no point in existing, and everything is stupid, and this is bad news, right?
Yeah.
And there's no ultimate justice, and there's no ultimate truth, and we have to consider, is it ethical to be alive, and all of that. So a lot of my clients in spiritual direction are moving from pessimistic nihilism to optimistic nihilism, and what that looks like is I'm still nihilistic. I still 100% believe that I'm going to die, that there's no afterlife. I don't believe I have a soul. I don't believe I just don't believe any of that. I don't believe there's any inherent meaning in the universe. I don't think that maybe anyone will know that we're here, but that used to really bother me, and now it doesn't. Like, I've built a life that can withstand that level of harsh truths of reality. I've built a life that can handle me looking at death in the eyes without having to run away from it, or make a story to run away from it. So you kind of have two options. Like, you either have a story to soften some of those harsh truths of reality, or you build a life with tools and resources to be able to face that head on, looking at it. So I still consider myself a nihilist. I just built my life to be able to withstand that. And I'm okay with the time that I have now to be spinning on this planet in this meat suit that I have. And when my time is over, I'm ready to let that go, because I didn't even want to be here anyway.
Britt's a badass. Britt's a badass, period. DJ Wilkins 7, thank you, brother. Appreciate you for being a member in the super chat. Really appreciate it. And then they sent another one. Thank you so much, brother. By the way, he's writing a script that we don't have time. Anyway, thank you, DJ. Given the syncretism of religious history, should atheists really feel bad about borrowing from religion? How can they condemn us if they're guilty of? I love that.
This is a great question. In fact, I was just referring to this book the other day. Elaine de Botton has this book, Religion for Atheists. Fantastic atheist scholar and philosopher. And he's one who advocates for stealing from religion. And he has this great TED Talk. If you want to just listen to him for about 20 minutes, he has this great TED Talk called Atheism 2.0, and all the ways that atheism should be and secularism should be stealing from religion. And his argument is that religion is really good at taking anything useful and incorporating it into the religion, right? We know that for like Christmas or whatever, we know that there's various things that, the religion is stealing from over time. And religions are really great at being able to shift in that way. And they do inquisitions where they are taking in the culture and making it Christian in some way. And so his argument is that part of the secular project needs to be an inquisition in reverse. That, like, hey, you took all this stuff and put it in Christianity or Islam or whatever it is. And like, now with secularism, we're taking it back. And so he advocates what's called an inquisition in reverse, that instead of doing a crusade and taking all of this culture and incorporating it into Christianity, we're now going to undo that process. And, you claim Christmas, for example. Well, we're going to take Christmas back. We're still going to do Christmas. We're not going to believe in XYZ or whatever it is. So he's a big advocate in the atheist space for this idea of we should not be ashamed at all at stealing from religion. Religion is really effective. It's our most effective cognitive technology that we've built as humans to be able to respond to human needs. And if we just throw the whole thing away, then secularism is not going to be effective. And he makes some great arguments that stealing from religion is not just something we shouldn't be ashamed of, but it's the only way that secularism is going to become effective. So, for example, let me give you a true example of this. You'll love this. In, I think it was Denmark. It's one of those kind of countries. I think it was Denmark. They were really talking about how can we develop more intentional communities when they are mostly secular. Like they're really a secular country at this point. And so they built these kind of apartment complexes intentionally where people have their own private apartment complexes, but then in the downstairs it's all open seating and you all eat dinner together. And you don't have to eat dinner. You can come downstairs, but you have to all participate. So everybody participates in activities and gardening and food prep and food cleanup, and the single moms are just doing amazing because they're doing like child rotation because there's like a child care center and they're taking turns with kids so that they can all work. The older people are living longer because they're able to be involved and pass down their wisdom to the next generation. And what they do is before they eat, they will sing a song together, and they're doing this fully intentionally. Like, hey, we're going to, before we eat, sing this song. And so they all sing a song and they have 10 or 15 songs that they sing, and they're all collaborating and communicating. And so this is an example of this concept of like, when we start stealing some of these back, yes, it may look a little bit like religion when you gather for a meal and you sing a song beforehand, but they are doing this 100% secular, and the single moms are thriving, the kids are thriving, the older people are thriving, and we're seeing some real clear scientific markers of human well-being. And that's what, the secular project should be going towards, is those markers of human well-being.
I feel like we're doing that. I didn't even realize it, but I think what I've done with identifying a lot of the comparative mythology stuff, trying to unravel and show you the sources by which I think Christianity is borrowing from, whether it's philosophy, ethics, whether it's religious narratives, the biblical Hebrew Bible, of course, borrowing from older Near Eastern stories or Greek myths or whatever. Like, in a way, I feel like I'm not just wanting to identify the sources and show you that this book is clearly just recycling other religious stuff. In a sense, I've fallen in love with other narratives along the way. Like at first I'm like, ha ha ha, y'all are borrowing from Dionysus. And then I start like wanting to buy little Dionysus statues and then study more about the wine and how significant he was in the Greek world and then the other pantheon. And like, I start to appreciate the pantheon of the Greek myths and their gods and like various other myths.
That's why when people ask me like, you're an atheist, don't you regret like getting your degree in theology? Isn't that a worthless piece of paper? And like, in some ways, yes. Like in some ways, like I have a degree in a God that I don't believe in, and it is worthless. But the reason that I don't regret it is religion was such an amazing place to learn about human nature, to learn about the kinds of stories that we tell, to learn about what helps us thrive, what we fear, what we hope for. I just learned so much about human nature by studying religion that even though I have a piece of paper studying a God I don't believe in, it was a fantastic way to learn about myself, and I don't regret it.
Salute. DJ Wilkins is back again, says, do metaphysical narratives help us prioritize our virtuous instincts by assuming they come from something bigger than our local self? Any alternative?
Yeah, metaphysical narratives do that. They help you to prioritize. Evolution gives us both selfish and selfless traits because we want to live individually, but also you want your tribe to live. So we have both social and selfish traits. Religion calls the selfish ones, demonic and evil, and the social ones good. But really both are very human. The alternative to doing metaphysical narratives is to have a different kind of internal compass that doesn't require a metaphysical story. And that's really going to be your core values. So the different way to go about how to orient in a way that's ethical when you admit that morality may be relative in some ways. or there's no ground of objective morality, is to do is to make decisions from your own core values. That here are my core values, they're going to guide my decisions, and that can give you a moral life without requiring a metaphysical story. So you can do that with like inner compass development.
Well said. Thank you, DJ. Plot Twist Dad. Thank you so much for the super chat. Hey, Britt, humor helps me combat nihilism. What is your favorite style of humor?
My favorite style of humor is Larry David style. Like not just him, but like Larry David style, where you are just like, why do humans do this? There's like, I feel like Larry David and Seinfeld is a little bit this way, but definitely Curb Your Enthusiasm, where you just are laughing at the absurdity of what humans do and our little social rules. There's something just so deliciously absurdist about that for me. So I really enjoy the humor of Larry David kind of style, where we are examining the silly things that humans do and thinking about why and how silly it is.
Thank you so much, Plot. And then we have Martin Gatt 94. Thank you for the super chat. Derek, I would love to see you make a reaction to Emmerich's detailed passion vision. This would be especially appropriate during Lent time. Never heard of it. Have you heard of this?
Not the video. No. I don't. I mean, I've seen some people do, it's very popular to do something like atheism for Lent, or sometimes atheists will do theism for Lent. That was kind of made popular by Peter Rollins, and I have done that. So I have a friend who will do atheism for Lent, and then I will do theism for Lent, and then we kind of will share our experiences. And so like I've heard of things like that. I don't know what this is though.
So it's Anne Catherine Emmerich's passion vision refers to the intensely detailed mystical visions of the suffering, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ experienced by the 19th century German Augustinian nun. Her accounts were transcribed by Clemens Brentano and published in 1833 as the Dolorous Passion of our Lord Jesus Christ. Vivid sensory details are some of the aspects of it. Emmerich described the events with remarkable cinematic detail, including the physical toll of the scourging, the interior emotional state of Mary, and the specific topography of Jerusalem. Mystical encounters. Her visions frequently included vivid interactions with angels, demons, and the resurrected Christ, who appeared to her with radiant, luminous wounds. And of course, her highly visceral description served as a primary inspiration for Mel Gibson's 2004 film, The Passion of the Christ. I did not know that. Interesting.
Yeah, so this kind of reminds me of Saint Teresa of Avila and other mystics. And like, there's some talk in secular spaces that we know that, for example, like there's certain kinds of epilepsy or temporal lobe damage that will make you very susceptible to religious hallucination and spiritual psychosis and things like that. And how much of those kinds of people, had that kind of epilepsy or whatever, we don't know. There's lots of theories around that. For me, like I read mystics, and I have a teacher who comes from a wisdom tradition. And so it's really interesting for me to read those things, and I can go with her as far as like, I've had an experience and this is what I feel. I just, like you, no longer believe that because you saw this thing in a vision or your brain interpreted it that way, that therefore, Christ was resurrected or whatever it is. Right. But I'll definitely read, accounts of mystics, and there are many times where I'm reading what they're writing, and even though it has like a Christian bent or a Muslim bent to it, I know what they experienced. I've felt what they've experienced. They're just putting it in different mouth sounds than I do, according to their time and culture. And so I can meet that there and just not go all the way though. But yeah, I love reading things like that, and I enjoy mysticism because mysticism focuses on the experience, and religion focuses more on kind of the dogmas around the experience.
Thank you so much. Martin, I'll look into it, my friend. Thank you. S. Mill Still, thank you for the super chat. Isn't believing so strongly in well-being, justice, ethics, etc., contradictory to nihilism, belief, meaning, and nihilism?
Yeah, so nihilism is, again, the rejecting the belief that there is inherent meaning in the universe, meaning like there's a plan and you can discover it, or there's a God or whatever. It doesn't mean you can't create meaning, well-being, justice, ethics. So nihilism can be very ethical because it says, if I don't know what's going on in the universe. If the only justice we have in the universe is what humans create, then let's do that, even though humans create it. If humans are the ones who create ethics, if humans are the ones that create well-being, if our brains are narrative seeking, pattern seeking, meaning makers, okay, let's build up meaning from the ground up. So nihilism doesn't mean that you can't have meaning. It just means that the universe doesn't care. So I fully believe, like, I live a life of meaning, purpose, ethics, all those things. I just, as a nihilist, don't believe that the universe gives a shit. Like, it's not inherent to the universe. It's something I'm building from the ground up.
I was going to say, isn't another way of painting it is that the universe itself isn't concerned with these matters. It isn't inherent with meaning. It's not projecting the meaning. Like, when you talk to a believer and they go, well, morality, like the debate with Sam Harris and William Lane Craig, if you watch that debate.
No, I don't think I did it. That guy's voice, I just can't stand. And I'm usually not that petty, but like there's something just as a woman, like that pastor voice that is just like really grating to me.
It's a car salesman thing.
I don't know. I just can't. It's a thing for me.
I feel you. Well, in it, he constantly goes like, you need objective, like metaphysical morality. Like the morality needs to be like beyond, and it needs to be grounded in that beyond. And then you have, which you're pointing out, like, no, inherent, it's something we give meaning to. We as creatures are the ones who actually are the ones.
The person who did this follow-up chat followed up in the comments and just said, well, since we don't know truth, ethics is just a guess. Well, okay, but like if you say our ethics come from the Bible, we're still doing subjective morality. Like, you still have some people using the Bible to support slavery and some people using the Bible like, everyone is doing subjective morality. Atheists are just honest about it. So I will tell you that even though ethics, like even though morality may be relative and not grounded in something universal, doesn't mean that you can't have better or worse ethics, just from the point of view of suffering being something that's real and reducing suffering. And so if you have one table dealing with an ethical question and you have the science of well-being and you have conversation and you have empathy and you have secular values, and at another table you have the Bible, historically you're actually going to get stronger ethics with that first table. So I understand that ethics is still sticky, but it was always sticky. It's sticky in the Bible, even if you're claiming ultimate, some kind of ultimate moral grounding. So everyone,
Esmil's
okay, I'm just saying, everyone's doing subjective morality, and there's just better and worse ways to do that.
Yeah.
Just from the point of view of human suffering. That's all you have to do.
Right.
If you just say suffering is bad, less suffering is better, you can start doing ethics. As soon as you make that chess move, you can start doing ethics.
Great point. William Arens, thank you for the super chat. Again, good to see you. On May 24th, which is my birthday, Pentecost will be celebrated. Rather than call that event a fairy tale, perhaps the best way for a church to understand that story in Acts is an origin of belief rather than as history.
I don't have any history celebrating that particular holiday as a Mormon, so that one's all you. Is there a way that you would spin that holiday in a way that could be authentic to you now?
To be authentic to me now?
I don't know. Is there a way that you can?
I have no attachment to it at all. Like, I don't even see any, like, for me,
value.
I could make a funny video about my birthday lines up on the same day as Pentecost. No, but I think they're asking, rather than call that event a fairy tale, perhaps the best way for a church to understand that story in Acts is an origin of belief rather than as history. Well, Dennis R. MacDonald, several of his books back here, he does think that Acts is the overall story of Acts is a myth of origins. So it's an epic kind of the origin of the church. And so the author is trying to intentionally thread, obviously, historical verisimilitude, yet writing a myth of origins of how the church became successful and how it succeeded under persecution and trial and all that kind of stuff. And of course, the Holy Spirit is the center figure that shows up and empowers them to accomplish this. And it would be cool if the church started recognizing this literature, for example, that describes Pentecost as a origin of belief. I would even call it an origin myth of the origin of the history of the church. Maybe they don't want to call it a fairy tale because that sounds a little bit mocking to them and they don't like that. Myth has value, though. Myth Myth is not just, oh, it's not true because it's myth. Myth
Yeah.
carries much more depth to a lot of things than people give it.
Some churches are really doing this with Job, just because the overwhelming scholar consensus is that Job was not a real person, and so they'll just say, okay, this is a story, but what can we glean from the story? So some churches, like, there are certain stories that where just the evidence is overwhelming, they're already shifting to, let's work with this as a story.
Mhm.
Some even do with the Exodus story, or Genesis, if they're more evolution friendly, like, okay, this is a story, what does it tell us about humans, human
Yeah.
longing, human issues, human problems, human hopes. And I can still connect to those humans in that way.
I agree. I did a recent interview, and we'll end on this with whatever you want to bring up after this, and then we'll wrap it up. I did an interview, long interview with Dr. John Dominic Crossan recently in the House, and he interprets Jesus and the New Testament from an evolutionary standpoint. And he says that if you take the program that Jesus had, which was nonviolent resistance, okay, he thinks that violence will produce violence, right? And that was the operation of the Roman Empire, was violence. It was crush your enemies, your dissenters, annihilate. Problem is, violence keeps violence alive. And so he believes the philosophy that Jesus had was resist, but non-violently. And it got him killed. And it got many of the who followed him killed. But he honestly believes that, he asked the question in the interview, are we a sustainable species? And he said, if you read Jesus through the lens I'm trying to point out, that violence is not the key, that it is going to cause us to create worse weapons. It went from a sword to eventually to a catapult, to eventually to a gun, to eventually to a nuke. What's next? He said, violence is going to keep perpetrating violence. Look at it through an evolutionary lens. He said, nonviolent resistance and being willing to lay down one's life in a sacrificial way of saying, like, we're going nowhere with this. Stop. Let's stop the violence. Let's stop killing each other. It is not going to have our success at the end of the day as a human species. We will go extinct at our own cost. He said, when he reads Jesus through that lens, he says, I see someone who has some value to give, because it's just keeps making the violence worse violence. And I'm like, damn, if you look at it through that lens, you can kind of get what he's saying, even though I think Jesus was a superstitious guy who thought the end was going to happen soon. And that the God might come in and crush his enemies, and Rome would be annihilated and the kingdom would be established, probably.
But it does, like, combat, one of my doctoral professors, one of his arguments is, if we were evolutionary, we wouldn't get prophets like that do something that end up ending their life, because that wouldn't be evolution's project, where you're getting, all these prophets pop up that are getting stoned. So I think that's a good counter argument to that argument, that, like, you can still have evolution saying, hey, we can't become too tribal or we're all going to kill each other. That could actually still fit under the framework of evolution. It doesn't mean that, that original argument that, if we were evolutionary, we wouldn't have prophets. That's a good critique for that one.
Well, almost every religion has prophets. So, to me, that's also a silly point to bring up. Like, oh, this one's unique because it has prophets. Dude, have you read Mesopotamian literature? The scribes are prophets. Have you read Herodotus, where he talks about the Greek prophets?
Only Mormons have a modern prophet, we would say. So,
Britt,
Mormons still get that one.
Look, you kicked ass. You rock. We really appreciate you. I hope everyone subscribes to your YouTube channel. I'm going to bring that back up here in just a second. Final words are yours. Oh, I'll have the last word. But anyway, YouTube channel, what are you doing over here? What's the project?
I'm still trying to figure out YouTube, to be honest. I've been on TikTok is where I kind of grew my platform. And so I'm still trying to learn long form content and what I want to do with that. But mostly I have tools for existential crisis and nihilism. But I do some stuff in secular spirituality and critiquing religion. But I wanted a place especially for people who feel like they don't have any tools to orient themselves in the meaning crisis, but can't walk into a religion. Because there's a lot of people in the deconstruction space doing great work, I just feel like, yes, I can speak to that space, but there's so many people who are, speaking to that. And so for me, the nihilism space is like, oh, I don't think that there's enough attention on this space of what if leaving religion is just not enough one day. And what if you're struggling in the meaning crisis? And how can you get tools for that without walking into a cult or a church or whatever? So I do more of that, mostly just because I feel like that's not talked about enough, whereas religious deconstruction in the past 10 years has been pretty well covered, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Go subscribe to her YouTube channel. I value your insights and like to consider what you say here. Also, you have your website. If anyone is going through an, tough time and you're also struggling with some of the stuff, Britt has obviously plenty of resources. You're not taking any clients right now, you said, right?
I'm not. I'm finishing my dissertation, and I have a book coming out on nihilism, so I'm doing edits. But come July-ish, I should be taking on new clients again. And yeah, and it's not a cult. I don't have a secret plan for you. I can just hopefully help you find some tools in a way that's authentic to you. So how that looks is different for each client. So it's not a scary thing. I'm just trying to help. If something I said resonated, and if something didn't, then I'm just not the person for you, and that's okay. Nobody can be everybody's cup of tea.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for taking your time to come hang out with me.
Yeah. And thanks for this platform and ability. You have an ability to push back and to handle a lot of nuance and calling out our own community when we need to. And that's what I just most appreciate about this channel. Otherwise it just becomes an echo chamber. And if you're not fighting to work to get out of an echo chamber, then you're probably just in one. That's just how our brains are. So I appreciate how you push back on the echo chamber that can happen in this world.
Well, I don't know how much influence it'll have, because once the popes and the priests within the community ostracize you, they're like Mormons. Don't watch that show. They all stop listening to you. They all have nothing to do with you, or they don't care what you have to say. And I'm going to just flex and say this: none of them are producing the depth of research when it comes to the actual fields that I'm researching. Nobody in this space is doing what I'm doing the way I do it. Just like I can confidently say with watching your material, no one in this space is doing what you're doing in the depth that you're doing and accomplishing what you're accomplishing. I think that all of us should coexist. But when people are telling you or making the well poisoned so you can't drink the water from different, people, or you feel like, oh, that's a bad person, I can't go learn from them, that sounds culty. I'm not going to lie. That sounds like you're creating cult behavior, and you're telling people who to talk to, who you should listen to, by disparaging them from considering what, others have to say within the community. And I find that unfortunate. That I wish it would have more influence, my voice here, but I won't be shocked if it has very little impact with those specific people who are under that kind of.
And the reason that I'm okay with it, and that it shows up in my nervous system, when people make videos, critiquing me, like I'm human, it does show up in my nervous system. But at the end of the day, the great treasure of nihilism, and this will be the last thing that I say, is that it really forces you to be honest about what kind of life is meaningful and authentic to you. What kind of life would be worth experiencing for you, knowing that it ends. And so I'm doing the work. Like, I really just said, all right, I'm going to die. I got this one life. I would really love to talk about these kinds of things, but not have to believe in God. How do I do that? And so for me, when people don't like what I'm doing, even though I'm human and it can hurt my feelings, at the end of the day, I know I'm going to die, and I feel like I'm doing some good. And this is where I feel like I can help people and serve. And it gives me a lot of meaning and purpose. So I'm just going to keep doing my thing, because this feels like the most authentic life for me, that is worth experiencing and living, even though I'm going to die. So mostly I can get through kind of some of those rougher spaces in the atheist world. But I do hope we can get better as a community for holding different kinds of approaches to our same goal, which is to help reduce religious trauma in the world and our dependence on religion.
I agree. I value everything you're putting out there, and I enjoy you allowing me to put you in tough pickles there.
That's okay.
I owe you one. Now you gotta get
okay. All right. I'll get you on a good one.
Yeah.
I'll get you. No, I think that's great. Like the time flies with you because this is just pure
Yeah,
joy for me. So
same.
the time just flew, and thanks for everyone engaging in the comment section. I was reading all your comments. So and yeah, just thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that. And thanks to everybody in the chat, even the critical, thinkers, people who are challenging or whatever, for being kind. I would like to foster an environment of community of people who can allow guests who they don't have
That's
to
true. There
agree.
wasn't a lot of cheap shots. Like people disagreed with me for sure, but there wasn't a lot of cheap shots. So I'm glad that you have curated a space where there wasn't just a lot of kind of personal attacks or character attacks. So I do appreciate that in the comment section. Thank you.
Yeah, that means a lot. Thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen, never forget, we are Myth Vision.
Son, do you want to know what the truth is? After this, there's no turning back. You take the blue pill and you wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill and you stay in Wonderland, and I show you just how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.